blinding flash rips out from a rocky outcrop just outside town, screaming that something massive just unleashed its power. This was the day Kanado finally unlocked his true, innate power, because the guy who'd once been written off as the bottom of the barrel was no longer the same, and his little magical companions watched it all happen. That moment still burns in his mind, sweat drips off his brow as he stumbles into a brutal realization. On that day, he stopped being human. Right now, he's inside a loud, bustling adventurers guild, slouched against a pillar with a calm, unbothered face, watching the chaos unfold all around him. Just as his calm presence settles in, a loud, blonde guy barges right in front of him and gripes about how long the line is. Then when Kanado calls him out, the man plays dumb, acts shocked, and claims he didn't even see Kanado standing there. The act falls apart. What's left is a nasty sneer. He fires back, asking if Arga, that lowly E-rank bottom-feeder tamer, even has the nerve to boss him around. When the jab lands, Kanado's face hardens with fury. He lanes in tight, contempt spilling from every word, and snarls at the tamer to know his place, calling him a weakling shrimp. To prove he owned the line, the bully snatched another adventurer and yanked the horned kid back by his hair while he razzed him to death. Just as he tries to push forward, a huge hand snaps around his wrist and slams him back. Guild Master Anson Neowega steps in, calm but unshakably firm, and tells him cutting the line is simply not allowed. Ansel corners Chasen adventurer Nimra, warning that this kind of trouble could get them demoted, then whips around to Kanado, Arguson, and snaps that he needs to report these issues to the staff right now. Even with a heavy sigh, that quick, faint smile says Ansel's willing to let it slide for now. He forces a smile on his face, a bead of sweat slides down his temple, and he blurts out that it's totally fine, because hey, he'd have plenty of free time anyway. Then he whips around toward the guild counter, where a bright-eyed receptionist greets him with a cheerful "How can I help?" Hinado says he's here to report his departure from Hinado's party, and right beside him, Guild Master Ansa studies him with a sharp, puzzled stare. The moment he finally signs off, pain crashes in and drags him back. His mind reels through every step that led him to this, and bitter truth tightens across his face, because he knew this was coming. 3 hours ago, Nemura, all spiky hair and smug swagger, sat there while 2 women flanked her like bodyguards. Then she jabbed a finger straight at him and barked, "Arga, I'm banishing you." Kanado just gaped back in total shock. He's struggling to even make sense of it, so he blurts out what banishment means, then asks if he messed up. The hooded woman next to Nimra scoffs and snaps back that it's because he's a tamer, like his senses are too dull to get it. She snaps that they don't need some tamer who can only befriend monsters, and Kanado, still totally lost, asks what's so bad about being a tamer, only for Nimra to jump in with a smug little, condescending promise to explain it to him. Nimra screams that the tamers level up way too slow since they split the experience with their monsters, then hammers home the fact that Arga is the only E-rank still standing in the party. Kanado tries to push back, saying they already talked about this when he joined and that Nimra agreed it was fine, but she steamrolls right over him. Then Nimra snaps that if Kanado strips away his monsters, he's nothing but a pathetic weakling. He fires off a desperate plea, reminding Nimra that they've been together for 2 years. Then Nimra snaps coldly that it's true and sneers at the word companions. He shoots back that anyone who hauls the whole party into the dirt doesn't deserve that title. Instead, he fires off the final insult, dead weight. As Nimra and the 2 women burst into vicious laughter, Kanado just stands there, crushed to the bone, and Nimra rubs it in. Now he's got all the free time he could ever want. That brutal memory finally crumbles away, snapping him back to reality at the guild counter. Then the receptionist scans his adventure card and goes, "This thing hasn't been updated in 2 years." Right there, she promises to handle his new registration paperwork. He tells the receptionist to update his status, and Riley blurts out that he's got all the time in the world now that he's been banished, leaving the poor woman completely flustered. She answers by raising a sinister, dark crystal that looks like a sphere. Then he glares at it, annoyed and wary, demanding to know what it is and why she won't let it go. She grins and tells him it's a brand new status checker, one that reads his info straight through the crystal. As Kanado blurts out his shock, the receptionist tells him the info gets sent straight onto his adventure card, right there. Then Ansa, the guildmaster, cuts in after overhearing, saying the old written application system was a mess since people kept cheating their details. The receptionist fires up the scan and starts reading Argo Abilion's info straight from the crystal's glow. Argo Abilion, 18 human, rank EG. She keeps calling him a tamer, and then out of nowhere, a second title flashes on Fusionist. He lunges at the device and snaps, "It's broken." The receptionist jerks her gaze up from her work, completely baffled by his sudden blow-up. Anza takes a step forward, eyes blazing with curiosity, and admits he's never heard of a Fusionist. yet he insists the crystal can't possibly be wrong because the device spells out skills like tame, companion art, mix, and fusion art. The guild master's eyes pop wide as the truth clicks into place. Second job, a whole new occupation. Kanado can only repeat the words, his mind scrambling to understand what he's hearing. He explains that most people only juggle one job, but a tiny handful are crazy enough to carry two, what they call a second job. The moment it lands, Kanado's mouth goes dry and his eyes widen because the truth hits him like a punch. He's got two occupations and he clenches his fists and blurts out that this new turn is perfect for switching jobs. Then the guild master slams it down, warning him not to take this like it's no big deal. His excitement drains to nothing, and wide-eyed shock slams in as he realizes just how insane this is. Getting a second job is a once-in-a-thousand-years kind of rarity. The shock snaps away and pure joy surges back. He finally clocks how huge this discovery is, convinced he's a once-in-a-thousand-years prodigy and that his luck has flipped completely. His mind snaps to the real question, what is he even supposed to do in this new job? He blurts out, so what exactly does a fusionist do? The receptionist leans in just as curious, but the guild master just stares back, completely lost, and admits he's never even heard the word, looking utterly perplexed with. When the guild master gives him zero answers, he blurts out theories on the spot, and based on the name alone, he bets the job is all about crossbreeding monsters. The moment his theory lands, his excitement crumples. He realizes anyone can crossbreed, and he's left feeling stupid for getting swept up in a once-in-a-lifetime breakthrough, while the guild master just gapes at him, frozen and stunned before blurting out, anyone could do it. What? He whips back to the guild master, sweat dripping down his face, and blurts out, half in doubt, asking if he can really pull it off. The question hangs in the air just outside the guild hall. Storming out of the guild, he spots a calm patch of field, and immediately starts testing his brand new powers, gripping a blank card-like object in front of him. He grips the card tight, eyes locked in pure determination, and he snaps a command into the empty air. All right then, come out, you guys. Right after he called out, three long, dark, shadowy figures burst up from the ground in front of him, their forms blurry and twisted, but unmistakably monstrous. The summoned shadows sharpen into focus, and instead of monsters, they settle into three tiny, familiar pets, a baby dragon, a wolf pup, and a slime. He gave his companions a proud nod, saying they'd be the core of his very first fusion experiment. Then at his snap, a status screen blasted into existence, and the slime leaned in to inspect it like it was the coolest thing in the world. The screen lit up with their stats: level 10 baby dragon, attack 3 and defense 1, while the level 10 baby wolf hit for 2, and the level 15 slum came in swinging with attack 11. He couldn't help but think it all looked painfully weak. Even with the odds stacked against him, he shoved his weakness aside and pressed on with the plan, studying a chart of possible fusions until he landed on Lala, the baby dragon, and chose a bat as the fusion material. This confidence didn't come out of nowhere, it sparked from a weird, mind-bending chat. Ansa, the guild master, even blurted in shock that a tamer could only command monsters, but Kanado remembered how effortless fusions had always felt for him. Ansa was adamant, declaring that tamers can't crossbreed monsters to spawn any new species at all, and even the guild receptionist, just as baffled, grilled Kanado, asking where in the world he thought that idea was a common skill. Under her sharp questions, nervous sweat poured down his brow as he scrambled to find a single answer. He finally spilled the truth. He was 100% self-taught, never set foot in a real school, and he'd never even laid eyes on another tamer. The confession hit the room like a crushing weight, and he lamented how his lonely life had finally been exposed. The receptionist saw it all and couldn't help but pity him, because he had no friends at all, while Ansa remembered the extra blow. Kanado had been banished too. With that humiliating memory still rattling in his head, he snapped it away with a hard no, then straightened up, determination blazing, as he swore it was time to get back on track and press forward with the fusion. He lets out a heavy sigh and swallows the truth. Yeah, he's a fusionist now, and decides that mixed fusion art is way more jaw-dropping. Then he studies the prompt in front of him, an offer to fuse a baby dragon with a bat. No pause at all, his finger slams yes, and the mixed fusion art kicks off instantly. The command snaps into action. Wham! A brilliant flash detonates around Kanado as the bat and the baby dragon get yanked together in a roaring swirl of energy. As the light fades, the new creature finally comes into view. Kanado stares in shock as the dragon's wings shift shape and color, now looking eerily like a bat-s, and the small thing lets out a curious little growl. He immediately checks the creature's status, and sure enough, its overall stats have dropped, but its racial skills are unchanged, and then bam! A brand new power has landed, its ultrasonic wave. That first wave of worry evaporates, and then, bam, an enormous triumphant grin spreads across his face because he realizes the lower base stats don't matter. the new skill turns the whole game around and the creature is stronger overall. He's brimming with fresh purpose, lifting a modified dragon high into the air and shouting that as the fusionist, he'll forge it even stronger than ever. While the baby wolf and the slime stare in awe, Kanado shifts his gaze to all three of his creatures and tells them they're lucky. His voice flips from triumphant to heavy with sorrow as he tells them fusion can make them grow stronger and stronger, but then he admits it stings. Even after being crowned a once-in-a-thousand-years talent, he still feels weak. That thought doesn't drag him into despair. He clenches his fist with iron resolve and silently promises himself, I'll get strong too, just like them. Rage simmered in him as he replayed the adventurers who'd mocked him, their condescending faces burning into his mind, sweat sliding down his temple until his resolve fully hardened. He would show them his. His dark brooding got shattered when a tiny dragon popped up from their grassy plain perch just outside town and stared up at him. Out of nowhere, a wild plan lit up his brain, fusion. He started thinking, if humans and monsters are basically the same in magic and body, could they truly be fused? That thought slammed into him, terrifying and thrilling at once. Then the real question hit. Would he dare fuse his own soul with a monster? He weighed the terrifying odds. One wrong move and he'd either be twisted into a grotesque chimera or die on the spot. Then the payoff hit just as hard. A glowing prompt flashed in front of him, offering a fusion with a lesser arachne. If he pulled it off, he'd finally become strong. The idea of owning monster power was way too tempting. He wanted to be truly, unshakably strong, no matter what, and with pure conviction he picked yes and fired off his mixed fusion art. In the blink of an eye, a blinding pillar of light exploded out of him, and the raw shockwave slammed his little companions backward, tumbling them across the field. As the light finally dimmed, he staggered there, panting like he'd run 1,000 miles, sweat soaking him through but unbroken. Then it hit him. I'm alive, and relief crashed over him like a tidal wave. He scanned his body, found nothing wrong. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. Then the victory got yanked away when an impossible status window snapped open in front of him, an interface only monsters were ever meant to have. That anomaly hit him like a lightning bolt, and he went dead silent, eyes bulging with pure shock and total confusion. He choked out a strained laugh he didn't even believe, staring at the text on his screen, because it was undeniable. His race had flipped, he'd become a demon human, and that transformation was exactly why his status screen had suddenly unlocked. Staring at his own hands, one cold thought hit him like thunder. Somehow, in that desperate gamble, he'd stopped being human. Inside the loud, buzzing adventure guild, Kanado snatches a fresh request off the public board, eyes locked in, and bolts for the exit clutching that paper tight, because the real question hits him hard. Are there seriously this many awesome quests right here? He slams the paper onto the reception counter with a hard thud, eyes locked in, and vows, I'm taking this job. The receptionist double-checks everything, goblin extermination on the northern plains, and warns him it's mindless work with barely any pay, but he shrugs it off, saying he's doing it just to test his strength, and her face flickers with uneasy confusion. Staring up at him, she suddenly catches it and blurts out in shock, asking if Arguson had always been this tall, while he freezes for a beat, then scratches the back of his head like he's just been caught off guard. He flashes a cryptic grin and tells her he's basically been reborn, then warns that these new changes are only the start, while the receptionist just stands there, frozen in total confusion. He slams the conversation shut, spins around, and waves goodbye like he's in a hurry. I'm heading out. The moment he leaves, right behind him, the receptionist yells his name, while Ansa, the guild master, watches from just a few steps away. As he vanishes through the doorway, the receptionist whips around to Ansa, dread written all over her face, saying that something feels off with Arguson. Ansa watches Arga's odd behavior and figures he's just craving a clean restart, and then it hits. Arga once swore he'd been reborn, and Ansa remembers how fast he jumped at even the cheapest jobs. He rubbed his beard, eyes sharp with worry, and then kept pressing. Why would a battle-tested adventurer like Arga settle for a basic goblin hunt in the northern plains? The receptionist's concern only grew hotter. She can't help but worry Argo better be okay. Then the scene snaps over to the northern plains, and you realize how deadly it really is. Out in that rocky wasteland, Kanado is already there, tracking his targets, and he spots them at last. Hey, there they are, watching a bunch of goblins. He whips around to his companions with a cocky smirk, and declares they're the perfect opponents to see what his new strength can do after their fusions. Then he promises he'll put his own power to the test right after. As he weighs how much he's changed, he realizes what it really means to become a demonic human. His life force and magic power have quadrupled, and his attack power rockets from a pitiful 5 to a jaw-dropping 81. His mind keeps racing through every fresh power he's unlocked. When he fused with that spider-type monster, he gained the ability to spin spider silk, sure, but the real jaw-dropper is the last skill he took, Evolver. He stares at his hand, realizing this new power changes everything. He's doubling what he gains, and he already has the levels to make it work, so if this holds, his growth is going to rocket at an insane speed. Just as his reflection locks in, a goblin in the distance whips its head around like it just sensed them, and they've been spotted with. Without even pausing, he jabs his finger forward and barks for Lala, his tiny dragon, to blast an ultrasonic wave. His sonic blast tore through the goblin's lines, knocking every last one of them reeling in shock, and when he saw it land, he grinned. This bat fusion skill was deadly, then shouted for all his friends to charge forward. His monsters crash into the battle. Lily the slime hurls herself with a fresh cobalt fusion bite, while Lily the wolf charges forward using a boar fusion strike, and he just stands there, blazing with pride, realizing they've grown stronger and vowing he'll never fall behind. He dives into the attack, slams down on the goblin and cleaves it clean in two. Then, just like that, his face snaps into pure, stunned shock. The bisected goblin doesn't drop at all. Both have spring up on their own, and when their mouths gape, they unleash a silent, bone-chilling scream. He stands over the twitching ruins of the bisected goblins, his blade still buzzing from that last, effortless slice. That effortless wind leaves him reeling. How did he carve them in two with just a knife? He can't believe it, laughing in disbelief as he remembers how weak he used to be. His shock only grows as a flood of notifications slams into his vision, and he can't believe how fast he's leveling, just from crushing goblins, even with that X-boosting skill. Then it hits him. He must have snagged the experience from the monsters his teammates were cutting down too. He breaks into a grin the moment he checks the numbers. Everyone's stats skyrocketed, and his own progress is even more mind-blowing. He fixes on his own stats, and his smile snaps into wide-eyed disbelief. Attack power 241, agility 301, numbers that scream A-rank adventures, maybe even S-rank, and then one wild thought hits him. Maybe he can actually become the strongest. But his victory hits him for half a second, until a thunderous roar crashes across the skies, and he whips around, jolted. Right in front of him looms a massive, nightmarish creature, furred and colossal, with wing blades that slice the air as it towers over him, its shadow swallowing the sky. He can only freeze on the spot, staring in pure disbelief as one stunned word slips out of his mouth. Back at the Adventurers Guild, the receptionist snaps her head up with a worried look and demands confirmation about a swordbear sighting roaming the northern plains. Guildmaster Ansa rubs his beard, eyes sharp, and nods. There really have been back-to-back sightings lately. The receptionist says the swordbear is a monster with an official C-rank designation, and Ansa confirms it with a steady nod. Yep, its overall rank is C. At the Adventurers Guild, the receptionist just stares, shocked, speechless. She blurts out the nightmare on the spot. The swordbear's fur is razor-sharp, its claws cut like blades, and its attacks hit with an A-rank rating. Then her voice cracks with panic, because she knows Arga is only an E-rank adventurer. With the beast staring him down, Kanado locks in and weighs his next move, because his demon-human evolution has maxed out his companion art, and this is his shot to tame it. But he doesn't waste a second. Survival hits first. He barks for his companions to stay back. With a new resolve snapping into his face, he vows he'll crush this one, no matter what. The swordbear explodes into a deafening roar, and Kanado rockets forward, knife blazing toward the red. He lunges at the monster, craving the huge boost an A-rank fight would give him, like it'll level him up on the spot. And the moment his blade slams into its arm, he realizes its hide is ridiculously, impossibly hard. The beast bellows like it owns the world, and Kanato realizes one brutal truth: his knife's a joke, and driving his fist into that jagged fur is suicide, because before he can even process how fast it moves, a massive clawed arm crashes down. Barely dodging in time, he's hit with instant gratitude for the spider skill, and then he snaps off a silken thread, swinging out of the beast's reach to carve out some breathing room. He lands safely, eyes locking in with fierce focus, and in an instant a new plan snaps into place, so he switches tactics right on the spot. He yanks the spider's silk back again, then starts winding those tough, thin threads right around his own hands. He cinched the silk tight into crude gauntlets, and a smug grin lit up his face as he geared up for the next move. He roars the name of his makeshift weapon, plants his feet in a fighting stance, and charges back for round two, spider silk gloves. He surges forward, snapping his silk-wrapped fist back with a defiant yell, then hammers it into the monster's chest with a thunderous punch, swearing he's done being afraid of the swordbear's fur armor. The punch lands with a thunderous crack, and the massive beast reels back, its hulking body shaking hard from the hit. The monster's stagger collapses the moment Kanado's fist drives through its brutal hide, blasting dark fluid into the air. Then its massive claw thrashes once useless, as life drains away for good. With the beast finally crushed, Kanado drops to his knees and gasps for air, staring at the dead creature like it's unreal. because he didn't just survive a fight, he wiped out a C-rank monster, and the moment it clicks, triumph floods him as he whispers, "I won." What? His victory seals it, and then he snaps his gaze to the sky, resolve turning to pure steel, vowing to get even stronger as memories of his old promise hit him, the one where he swore he'd become powerful enough to make Kanado and the others regret what they did. At the local adventurers guild, that huge, unshakable stone stronghold is already buzzing, with today's missions in full swing. Inside, Kanado tells the receptionist his request has to be wrapped up fast, then he whips around to head out, dead sure of himself, while she urges him to stay safe. Just as he starts to bolt forward, a massive hand slams into view and halts him mid-motion, making him jerk back in shock. Ansa, the guild master, reaches out calm as a stone and asks if he's in a rush, warning him not to sprint through the guild. Kanado's caught off guard and he blurts out a quick, sheepish apology. A gentle admonishment lands and Ansa's face sharpens into focused observation. He notes that Kanado seems stronger now. Kanado just shrugs it off like it's nothing, while the receptionist watches in stunned curiosity. Ansa isn't just trading small talk, she's quietly sizing him up, clocking that his build, sharp eyes, and lightning agility don't belong to some ordinary kid. As Kanado turns to leave, the receptionist can't help but guess he's climbed to the top level by now, yet Ansa hesitates because he can't really tell from just one look. His curiosity hit max speed. He whirled back to the receptionist and asked straight up whether Kanado was taking requests again today. She nods and tells him she's sure. He's checking the logbook. Then she lays it out. Kanado always goes for the easiest, most useless little jobs, like wiping out 3 horned rabbits, tasks he'll sometimes redo multiple times in one single day. She flashes a bright smile and declares the guild master's vision is just his imagination, because how else could anyone shoot up that fast from boring little tasks like those? Guildmaster Ansa stared in quiet thought as the young adventurer leaned over the quest board, hunting for their next mission. Kanado's eyes locked onto a request for horned rabbits, so he smirked, figured they'd be perfect for fusion, and decided he'd tame one himself. Just as he spun to go with the quest slip in hand, Ansa's booming voice slammed in from behind, daring him to waste it. He screeched to a halt, spun around to face the guild master and the receptionist, and asked if they needed anything. Before Kanado could even answer, 2 towering, muscle-laden adventurers lunged into view and blocked his way with murderous glares. With that Mohawk swagger, Norsher pointed at himself and snapped, "I'm Norsher," then nodded to his buddy, "That's Razzle." He turned straight to Kanado and hit him with the truth, "You're Arga, the E-rank tamer who got banished by Kanado-sam." What? Their voices shot up with pure excitement as they crowned the Kanado who hit S-rank at just 18 as their idol, and then blurted that they and tons of other adventurers were begging to get into his party. A tired look settled on Kanado's face, and it hit him. Somehow, for 2 whole years, that party had let a weakling like him in. He flicked them off with a dismissive wave, telling them to skip him if jealousy was the real fight, because it wasn't his problem anymore, and that laid-back attitude only lit a fuse in the 2 of them. They snapped that his attitude was the whole issue, and Kanado just stood there, stunned for a moment. Razzle's rage erupted as he snapped that Argo was out here smiling like nothing happened, then accused him of stirring trouble for their idol. Norsher backed it up by telling him to know his place, but Razzle fired back that Argo needed to think it through and apologize. Kanado just stared him down, wordless, silently wondering if he even deserved this. He fires back, jaw set, refusing the demand. He wants to know why he's the one stuck reflecting, spitting that the other one is trash, the Kanado who used him on a whim and never cared. Razzle explodes with a roar, calling him a bastard and snapping if he's actually insulting them just because they admired trash, but Norsher won't budge. He insists Arga is the one who should be reflecting. Their fury finally erupts. The 2-2B adventurers whip out their weapons, Norsher charging forward with a huge club, roaring that he'll show the E-rank brat who's boss, while Razzle snaps back, accusing Norsher of looking down on him. He pulls out his curved blade and answers their aggression with calm questions, straight up challenging why they'd bring weapons out inside the guild, while the receptionist nearby panics and practically begs Ansa to step in. The guild master stays ice calm and tells the worried receptionist to hold up, urging them to wait and watch for a bit, because he's dying to see just how strong Arda has gotten. As Ansa watches, Norsher and Razzle slam their weapons down in one brutal synchronized strike. Then Ken Otto, face unreadable, lifts his gloved hand and catches those blades like it's nothing at all. He shuts their attack down cold, twists with brutal precision, and whips their momentum off course. Then, in one smooth strike, he hits both of them and sends them spinning into the air. 2 men slammed down hard, one cradling his gut, the other face first, the impact snapping the air, both groaning like it hurt like hell, while Ansa and the receptionist stared, stunned that it ended so fast. He towered over the defeated opponents and snapped at Wakanda's sentient, calling them total idiots, then reminded them that bringing weapons into the guild was a straight-up rules violation. His words hit like a punch in the gut, and the so-called tough ones clenched their teeth, burning with humiliation, because getting schooled after being wiped out so easily by an E-rank tamer feels downright pathetic. Even after losing, rage still burns in their chests, cursing their own weakness and his overwhelming power. Kanado just stands there, stone still, utterly unfazed by their useless fury. He effortlessly shuts down Norshire and Razzle's renewed onslaught, and even with all that brute muscle, their hits land weak and limp, so he just deflects them with barely any effort, while a furious grimace twists on one of their faces. Something about this feels dead wrong to him, because Burank adventures can't possibly be this slow. He remembers how they lost their balance earlier, and now he's sure they're playing with him, trying to slip in and make him drop his guard. His eyes narrowed to hard suspicion, and something clicked in his head. He didn't know their play, but he refused to sit still and slammed into a brand new plan. In a blur of motion, he whips around and slams the heel of his hand into Norshi's neck with jaw-dropping force. He decided to lean into their weakness on purpose, acting clueless so an opening would finally reveal itself, and then that crushing hit slammed Norshire down, tumbling helplessly across the guild floor. With his opponent still sprawled and motionless, Ken Otto stays in a tight crouch, eyes sharp and nerves on edge, wondering if this sudden silence is just another trap, and silently daring them to show where the next hit is coming from. Just as the standoff is about to rage on, a huge hand slams into the air and the whole scene freezes. No more moves. Guildmaster Ansa steps right between them and snaps, calling Kanado Arguson, saying that's enough, while Kanado stays on full alert, snarling that Ansa should move aside because he's sure the others are plotting something right behind the scenes. Ansa calmly shoots back, insisting the fight's done. Then he points at the fallen adventurer, making it crystal clear that both of them are finished, as the guild receptionist crouches by the unconscious Norshire, then leans in to explain everything to the totally baffled Kanado. Buranks aren't actually weak at all, because his senses just haven't caught up to his real, insanely superior power yet, and when it clicks, his jaw drops in pure shock. He leans in as Guildmaster Ansa lays it out. Everyone else already gets what's coming, and Kanado has gotten so strong he can smash through your ranks. Ansa leans in and says the tamer wiped out those two braggarts with zero monster help, and his swagger was E-rank at all. Then he reveals Razzle and Norshire are B-ranks, right on the edge of becoming A-ranks. With the danger hanging in the air, Anso slaps a hand onto Kanado's shoulder and demands he rein it in starting right now. Yet stunned out of his mind, Kanato can only force out a shaky, weak agreement. Restraint thunders in his head as the terrifying truth hits him. He's so powerful now he has to control himself mid-fight, and it knocks the air out of him while he walks off, drowning in thought. As Ansel heads out, he leans in close to the window and watches him fade into the distance, eyes locked and mind clearly racing. The guild receptionist strides up to Ansa, marveling at how ridiculously strong Arguson has gotten, then asks why it hit so suddenly, and Ansa just admits he has no clue. A fresh voice cuts in and claims his second job is probably tied to something bigger, and then the woman with long, light hair admits she doesn't have the details, but she's determined to dig in and find out. The receptionist swings her gaze to the woman and asks if she means the exact person they just talked about, double-checking that she really heard second job. Just as she's about to speak, the guild hall swarms in on her presence, soft murmurs of admiration snapping into pure shock when the receptionist spots her, gasps, and blurts out, "It's Sissel." The truth hits. She's Sissel Luce Sergil, humanity's deadliest, the legendary SSS rank adventurer, and she just sits there at the table with this quiet, knowing smile like she already sees how it all ends. With wide, curious eyes locked on him, she didn't blink once. She pushed her request straight to the guildmaster and begged him to tell her about the man from early. Deep in a dark cavern, a monstrous, many-legged centipede thing explodes out of a crack in the stone wall, and its claws scrabble wildly for grip. The beast's sudden burst into the scene makes the young tamer explode into a sprint for cover, and when he dares to look back, pure terror hits, sweat pours from his face as the monster towers in the tight passage. She scrambles up to the higher ledge and snatches a breath, while he turns back toward the blocked path and knows, cold and certain, that it's over now, the route is sealed, and things just turned deadly. Fear crumbles and rage floods him. He yanks his cloak tight, spits a curse at Kanado, blaming him for the whole mess, and then, right when his thoughts start spinning, the name hits his ears. He snaps his head around in shock. As the cavern shadows peel back, Sissel, draped in loose surgical garb, stands there, calm as ever, facing him. She meets him with a soft, calm smile, like nothing around them can rattle her, and the stunned tamer blurts out why she's alone in a place like this. Sissel just says she's hunting down Kanado's party because she has something urgent to ask them. Sissel says she can already tell the others are gone, then turns to the tamer and asks where they might have pushed deeper into the dungeon. Yet he just shuts down, silent as stone, wearing resentment like a mask. His silence screams with the sting of old betrayals, Nemoraz's cruel words replaying in his head, calling him a useless tamer, firing him on the spot, then vanishing and leaving him behind. Sissel snaps her focus back to the present and pivots fast. She asks whether he's heard anything from Kanado about a guy called the former Artiquin. The tamer's face tightens with tired recognition as he nods. He's heard more than enough about Arga, since people kept dragging his name into every comparison. He remembers the endless yelling about how Arga would have known the monster's name, while he hadn't even a clue. Sissel leans in, eyes sharp, and says Arga's monster knowledge was rumored to be even stronger than hers. In the dim dungeon, Sissel lined in, eyes blazing with curiosity, and pushed the abandoned tamer for answers, demanding to know whether he'd ever heard what Argus can do, the legendary tamer's true abilities. He outright confirmed it, calling out the rumors about Arga's insane talent for crossbreeding monsters. The sting of his dismissal hit like lightning in his head. Nemoras had barked that they'd hired a useless tamer, even worse than Arga, and the tamer snapped back in his mind about his futile protest. Arga's power wasn't taming at all, it was a completely different trade only someone else could master. He told Sissel that his old party had seen Argo pull off feats like that over and over, so they started treating his insane skill like it was just the usual baseline for every tamer. Leaning in with pure, no-holds-barred excitement, Sissel demanded he spill every last detail about it. In a barren rocky wasteland, Kanado stood there with a hard, contemplative frown, completely swallowed by his own thoughts. He stared at his newly transformed dragon, still reeling from the moment it burst into glowing light right as he leveled up, and he couldn't believe it actually happened. He clocked the creature's brand new form. Lala had evolved into a tiny chimera dragon, and even though it grew stronger, its weird mismatched limbs still looked downright grotesque to him. Guilt crashed over him the moment he took full blame, realizing his reckless, repeated fusions with low-compatible monsters had seriously wrecked Lala's evolution path. He admitted the stats weren't bad, but the outcome still felt brutal. Before his thoughts could sink in, his head jerked up at the feeling of something close by, and he shouted to one of his creatures, Kidra. He chases the exact presence he sensed, and right as it lures him in, he stumbles onto the entrance of a massive circular pit ripped into the earth, one side lined with stone steps that spiraled down into a pitch-black doorway, the gateway to a labyrinth. As they drop into the pit, Kidra, Lily, and Lily crowd in beside him, standing locked and ready at the stone entryway, poised to charge into the darkness. He takes a calm look at the road ahead and flat-out declares it's a beginner-friendly labyrinth, and with their current power, he's sure they'll breeze through it without a problem. His real mission is crystal clear now. Lala's evolution is still in motion, and he refuses to let it veer off course. If the labyrinth really has the fusion materials he needs, then that's all he's chasing. He pats Kidra, barks the order, and his whole crew surges forward, charging into the maze. The second they step inside, hostility hits. An ugly reptilian humanoid brandishes a crude blade and lunges at Kidra, while insectoid monsters skitter all around them. That sudden ambush snaps everyone into motion. Kanado sinks into a low crouch, his face turning stone cold as he yanks out his weapon and braces to intercept. He doesn't waste a second on the lizard man, he rockets past it, screaming at his crew to scatter the little ones because his real target is a metal stag beetle. To force Lola's evolution to the right form, he needs both beetle-type and steel-type elements, and this thing has them both. Sensing his target, he strikes immediately. He spots the beetle and yells as his hand flares with light, unleashing his taming skill to command it. His try gets slammed with instant resistance. The beetle thrashes and shakes off his skill like it's nothing, and the second attempt fizzles the same way, while the glow in his hand drains away as the creature stays totally unscathed. Those crushing failures hit like a slap. He clenches his jaw, rages, and snaps. It didn't work. As the rule crashes back into his memory, a tamer can try to tame just one monster and only 3 times. When tamer tricks failed, he snapped and went for force, then swung once hard, and his blade cut straight through the metal stag beetle's brutal, armored shell. That kill's power detonated through him, levels skyrocketed 6 times in an instant, and steel-willed resolve slammed into place. If he couldn't tame the next monster, no problem. He'd siphon its massive experience and dive deeper into the labyrinth. Meanwhile, deep in the cavern, Sissel couldn't stop thinking about Arga, the tamer. She stared at what he'd done, fusing monsters and even repainting them in new colors, then whispered the question like it might bite. Did their strength change too? And before long, she was sure of one thing: Arga and his creations could get terrifyingly strong. Her abandoned tamer shot back, asking why she believed that, and then he started to spill that he'd heard something about Arga too. Sissel nodded to herself, then let the real rumor slip. Argo was supposedly fusing a baby dragon. Right then the earth shook and split open. Out burst a monstrous, many-eyed centipede, screaming like it was tearing reality apart, and the abandoned tamer yelped in pure terror. The monster loomed over them, but Sissel stayed ice-cold and perfectly calm. The terrified tamer practically gushed his gratitude, relieved he could finally confirm things the right way. Sissel just shrugged and said he was lucky. She glanced at him with a soft smile and said he was lucky too, because now he could finally cut loose the nasty people who abandoned him, then crawl back up to the surface safe and sound. In the blink of an eye, her blade screamed through the air, and that monstrous centipede, which was still terror in the last moment, got split clean in two. She slid her blade back into its sheath and promised to walk him out. Then that jet-black sword hit him like a nightmare, and the tamer's mouth went dry. He stammered, staring in disbelief as he recognized her. The legendary SSS rank adventurer. After her run-in the labyrinth, Sissel rushes to Guild Master Ansa and tells him about this weird new adventurer, Arga, who's a tamer and a fusionist, and that combo instantly hooks Ansa's interest. The guild receptionist calls Sissel out for chatting with Arga way too often, but Sissel waves it off as nothing, then clamps down on the subject and fires back, asking if the receptionist really understands what Arga can do. Sissel insists she only watched him because something felt off, especially once she found out he taught himself and turned into a high-difficulty tamer. Then he drops a rumor he just heard. Arga's carrying a baby dragon around like a loyal companion, and Ansa doesn't brush it off. She explains why it's terrifying, because dragon species can't truly be tamed. They size up a would-be master's talent and only bow to someone strong enough to earn their respect. The guild master weighs the risk in his mind, because if Arga really tamed a dragon, that's undeniable proof of his raw talent. Sissel admits she hasn't verified it herself, but the idea of fusion art birthing a baby dragon has her hooked. Then Ansa slams a report onto his desk and declares he's going to investigate it in person. Satisfaction blooms across her face. She's finally gotten the proof she needed. With her drive fully reignited, Sissel turns on her heel and takes matters into her own hands. She's going straight for Argus, old companions, to hear the truth from them. Her eyes lock onto Kanado, and when she blurts his name, he freezes, startled, while hope lights up her face as she tells him straight, "You might be the one to make my dream come true." Deep in a stone labyrinth, Kanado and his familiars square off against a brutal horned ogre. Then it charges and bellows, smashing and swinging wildly, while Kanado drives the attack through the cramped corridor with his tiny creatures right on its heels. The brutal combo keeps rolling as one of his feathered familiars dives in and viciously pecks the ogre's face, yanking the lumbering monster back in a sharp surge of pain. Watching the beast buckle, Kanado stays ice calm. He clocks the ogre's fading strength and knows the moment is coming fast to tame it. He can't help but smile as he sees how fast his crew has leveled up, because even a labyrinth boss, even a D-rank ogre, now feels like it shouldn't stand a chance. Even battered and broken, the ogre digs deep and unleashes one last, desperate roar, pure defiance in its final breath. It surges forward, hurling its massive fist straight at Kanado's face, desperate to land one final hit. The crushing punch lands dead center, but Kanado doesn't even twitch. He stays statue still, face calm, eyes unshaken. He grins to himself. D-rank monsters can't even faze him anymore. Then he snatches the ogre in one fluid motion and hurls it over his shoulder, smashing it into the ground without breaking a sweat. As the beast twitches on the ground, Kanado drops a hand on his head and fires off his taming power. The ogre doesn't get tamed at all. Its body crumbles into glittering particles of light, and a treasure chest drops out of the chaos. Kanado stares in shock, instantly realizing it's a boss draw. He gapes at the treasure chest, then grips it tight and pries it open, his face blazing with eager anticipation as he can't stop wondering what's waiting inside. Joy bubbles over as he strides through the city streets, humming under his breath, and he can't stop smiling. Somehow everything's working out, and he knows he's unbelievably lucky. They crack open the chest and bam, inside is the ogre's legendary rare drop, a horn of battle, and to make it even crazier, there are two of them. He starts crunching the odds in his head, 1 in 10,000 for a single rare drop, 1 in 100,000 for two, and then it hits him. He just beat a staggering 1 in 100 million, so he erupts in triumph with a full-on roar. As he pushes through the crush of bodies, he calculates his next move, because that horn could net him 1,000 gold coins, enough to coast without work for 3 whole years. So he decides to stash one and sell the other, until a voice suddenly yanks him back when it calls out his old name. Arg. He whips around, face turning cold the moment he spots Nimruz and his party, and Nimruz sneers down at him, asking what happened to his body. So with pure irritation, he shuts him down and snaps that his name is Kanado. He can't stop replaying the shift in his head. Before, he had to crane his neck just to see the man he called Kanado, but now he's grown so fast, and it leaves him wondering if going demon-human and leveling up instantly triggered that wild spurt. Just as he starts spiraling into his own thoughts, the women from Nemmer's party crash the moment. Pigtail's girl scoffs, asking if he's on some weird drugs, and the hooded one sneers that it's obvious he must have been ashamed of being short. Nymer shuts their chatter down, eyes locked on the prize Kanado's gripping. Then he jabs a finger at it, stares in disbelief, and swears it can't be an ogre's rare drop. Kanado answers with a blunt, "Yep, and that's that." The women crank up the insults, hooded one sneer that he probably got it as charity while freeloading off someone else, and the girl with pigtails claims he must have stolen it, pushing Kanado into a sharp, exasperated cry. He swears he got that item by using his monsters, but the crowd keeps laughing in his face, like, relax, nobody's impressed by a measly derink drawing. To flex his so-called superiority, Nimmerus raises a ring high and loudly announces it as a B-rank rear draw. Then he swivels toward Kanado and asks, "You jealous?" Nemurus sneers and slams Kanado's find as a ghost prince drop, saying that sure, he's got the knowledge, but everything else about him is garbage. With a smug grin, Nimmerus taunts that if Kanado had been with them, he'd snag treasures like these in a heartbeat. Then he offers, like he's doing Kanado a favor, to let him back into their party if Kanado pushes for it. A bead of sweat slid down his face as he weighed the offer, and weary understanding flashed in his eyes. He finally gets it. They want him back because their labyrinth conquest is falling apart and they're clueless about monsters. They're cheering over some junk ring like it's gold, totally missing the fact that even high-rank rare drops don't always mean better, and he shuts it down thinking, yeah, they're just duds who don't even know the basics. What? A low, cynical chuckle slips out as he thinks. Asterisk, now that they finally see his worth, they're begging him back, and he blurts, who in their right mind would sign up for this? Right as the hooded woman snaps that he's insulting their kindness. His patience snaps, he whirls around and roars for them to shut up, and right there, 3 tamed monsters, the slime, the wolf, and the dragon, erupt into existence around him, shocking his old companions to the core. The trio flinches in disgust. Pigtails blasts the dragon as some gross chimera freak. Nymer snarls that the hairy wolf is the real problem, and the hooded woman mutters that the slime is the most normal one, even if it's still somehow not the same as before. Kanado's face contorted into a furious snarl as he barked his final command, "Disappear from my sight right now." He turns his back on them and clicks his tongue like it's pure frustration, because running into his old party feels like the worst kind of bad luck. Behind him, the pigtails woman hurls barbaric at his face for resorting to violence, and the rest just watch, glaring with irritation. He storms away and hardens his resolve. 3 years of carefree living is off the table now. He vows to forge himself into someone so strong they'll never be able to look down on him again. Meanwhile, Nimmers glares as Arga slips away, his face twisting into pure sourness, and the hooded woman beside him snaps in frustration. Arga is irritating, she admits, and she'd been hoping to pull him back into her crew again. Then she blurts out, "So what do we do now? Because beating the labyrinth isn't happening without a monster expert, some kind of tamer." After a while, Kanado confronts an old, goblinish shopkeeper and demands an item from him, gritting his teeth as he admits his knife has gone dull from countless dives into the labyrinth, and he needs to swap it for cash to buy a fresh weapon. He sets one shining gold coin down on the wooden counter, like it's about to change everything. A huge grin bursts across his face as he realizes he got away lucky today, and the shopkeeper shoots back with a sly, knowing smirk like he already saw it coming. Right then, the shopkeeper's coin crumbles into dust in his own hand, and the old man erupts in a brutal, piercing shriek of shock and pain. The shopkeeper blows up with rage, shouting that Kanado is a scammer and demanding to know what he pulled, so Kanado clenches up and snaps back that the coin isn't fake, it's a real drop from an ogre. Then he lays down his terms. As an apology, the shopkeeper can buy the fake for 2,000 gold coins and toss in the most expensive knife in the store. Then he growls a warning that the boy better not cross him as. With the tension snapping through the air, 4 hulking men suddenly slide into view behind the counter, glaring straight at Kanado like they want a fight. Yet he just stands there, meeting their threats head-on without flinching. Kanado locked eyes with the charging thug, ice cold, totally unimpressed, while the knife came flying, and he realized he'd walked into a far worse place than he ever expected. A world would be better off without it. He snapped sideways out of the strike, and the thug went flying past him, tumbling head over heels. He snapped his head toward the leftover thugs, grinning like a knife, and told them they were cursed to cross him while he was on edge. Then he paused like the universe flipped, and admitted maybe asterisk he was the unlucky one. The other enforcers just stared, stunned, and one of them muttered in awe at how savage his skill was. Right in the middle of that tense standoff, a young woman burst into the doorway and smiled, calling him Argacoin like she owned the moment, leaving the thugs stunned as they demanded who she was and why she was tied to their target, and then one of them barked a threat. "Step back or he'd cut her down." Her smile vanished in an instant, calm, steady, and unshakable. She looked him dead in the eyes and told him to shut it, because the conversation was still going. In the blink of an eye, the thugs crumpled to the floor, knocked out cold, and Kanado just stood there, stunned out of his mind at how fast it all flipped. He stayed frozen in silence as she spun back, grinning like nothing ever happened. Then she practically beamed and told him she'd been hunting all over for him. Kanado's thoughts skidded in panic as he tried to process the chaos. He hadn't seen a single thing. Across the room, the shopkeeper froze in terror and realization, burst out calling her name, Sissel, and that shout snapped Kanado's attention instantly. He stared at the young woman and the name hit him like a bell, Sissel, the strongest human. Now that he finally understood what was happening, he swallowed the shock and asked if she'd hear his request. Determination blazing in his eyes, he made his plea straight to me, demanding a party with me. He could only choke out a confused sound, sweating like crazy as a bead slid down his temple, because yeah, the invitation was real, but standing there in front of Sissel's calm, perfect smile, his world instantly flipped into chaos, and he couldn't tell if this was pure unbelievable luck or the worst kind of disaster. Ken Otto is jolted when Sissel asks him to join a party, and his thoughts instantly race to every legend he's ever heard. Sissel, the hero who crushed evil dragons, demon lords, and even gods all by himself. Ken can't wrap his head around why humanity's strongest warrior would want to team up with him. Sissel just stands there, eyes bright with hope, waiting for Ken's answer. He fires back with sharp skepticism, demanding to see proof that she's the real deal, not a fake. She boldly declares who she is, and with her jaw set, reminds him that her overwhelming strength is proof enough. Realizing mere words won't cut it, she raises a colossal blade and calls it the Divine Bone Blade, crafted from an evil god's bone, a weapon nobody else even can wield. Kanado stays on guard, remembering his recent run-in with a crooked dealer that left him branded as untrusted. He points out that flashing him a weapon he's never laid eyes on doesn't prove a thing. Shock hits her, she blurts out that she's been totally foolish, then says she should have shown him her adventure card from the very beginning, and yanks it straight out from her cleavage. He snatches the card, eyes going wide as he scans the unreal details. Cecil Lushergel, 18 years old, rank SSS, 3 callings listed like trophies. Sword Saint, Holy Knight, and Dark Mage with her level attack power and every skill marked as immeasurable. Plain as day, undeniable proof, and still one question claws at his mind. Why would humanity's strongest cling to an E-rank like him? She starts spilling how, ever since she was a kid, nobody has ever been able to keep up with her in combat. Kanado's stunned and starts praising her, but Sissel snaps back that it's not glory at all, it's a tragedy. Her tale keeps unfolding, and you can feel the weight of her lonely life crushing down, because starting out at the peak of power meant 0 challenges, 0 thrills, and no real reason to chase anything. She just couldn't stop yearning for more. Chasing that one missing thing, she tore across the world, no matter if her enemies were wicked dragons, demon lords, or malicious gods, and every last one of them paled before her until despair hit because the truth was brutal. The only thing she was hunting was something she could feed. After she hears the rumors about his power to supercharge monsters through fusion, she snaps into realization. This is her one shot. With hope blazing in her eyes, she tells Kanado, "If you can build the strongest monster anyone can imagine, then I'll finally taste the defeat I've been dying for." He takes it all in, a faint smirk creeping across his face as her wildly twisted desire sinks in. He swallows her words, sweat popping on his temple as her demand fully hits him. Then it clicks, this is the real reason she wants to throw a party with him. After weighing her offer, he nods, then slams one condition on the table. He'll team up, sure, but only if she's ready to spill everything he wants to hear first, because his terms are about to begin. With everything stripped down to bare clarity, their silhouettes face off, and he orders her to fight him. Once we get through, a colossal coliseum erupts into view, stuffed with a roaring crowd, and the arena floor lies empty, just waiting for the chaos. The coliseum hums with rumors. Some swear Sissel's about to fight in a duel, while others insist she's there for her party's entrance exam. Either way, a huge crowd packs in, hanging on her every reckless move. In the crowd, Ken Otto clocked just how huge it was, then immediately figured out the guys from that shop had somehow spread the word. Honestly, it was a perfect stroke of luck for him. In the arena, she tips her chin up at him, grinning like she's seen a miracle, and shouts his alias with pure awe, Argo Cohen. He grins when she clocks how insanely strong he's gotten just by looking, and he only answers with one thing: he made a promise. A week before, Kanado finally confessed something heavy. He didn't feel worthy to stand next to Sissel, so he snapped into action, swearing that in just 1 week, he'd prove he was the kind of man who could be her partner. He steps up in front of the crowd and takes the challenge head-on, while Sissel flashes a confident smile and dares him to show what he's got. Then he shoots back one clear, solid yes. Without a single word, Sissel surges forward, blade hanging low, and in the blink of an eye, she's on top of them. As she closes in, an insane pressure blasts off her and hits him like a wall, so strong he starts to doubt he'll ever win. Still, he grips his resolve and forces himself not to back away now. The crowd leans in, eyes locked tight. Then one spectator blurts out that it's Arga, but he looks nothing like he did before, while another guy mutters, "Is this really the same Kanado's lackey?" The crowd's words keep pounding in his head, and it hits him. This is the name people will give him in the world. If he links up with Sissel now, he'll get laughed at as nothing but her sidekick. This hits him like a hammer, forging steel in his resolve. He swears he won't flee, not for a second, and he'll take this battle head-on, proving his real power to everyone. With his resolve forged into steel, he erupts, pure emotion crashing out of him, and the crowd bursts into shocked gasps, swearing Arga has changed. Even Sissel's eyes go wide as he flashes forward at an unreal, instant speed. He slams forward and hammers their guard, kicking up dust and sparks across the arena floor, and as he fights, he can't stop thinking about where this power came from. One brutal week of fusion, over 100 level-ups, and a whole stack of brand new skills. Even after all that insane progress, Sissel can't crack her defenses. She feels like she's staring at an unbeatable wall, with no clear route to victory against. For a split second, the fighting lets up, and Cecil stares at him like he just broke reality. Then she blurts out that Argo has been matching her way too well. And just when he thinks he can breathe, she drops the truth. He's about as strong as she was back when she was only 2 years old, so hard it leaves him drenched in sweat and completely unable to speak. He surged forward with relentless force, and the crowd held its breath, stunned as he clashed blow for blow with Sissel, an unstoppable warrior who could wipe out evil gods in mere seconds. He hurled himself through the air with a dagger ready to end it all, but Sissel stayed ice calm, eyes locked on his charge. As he closed in, a cold dread hit him. His black dragon weapon from some shady merchant wouldn't stand a chance against her blade, forged from the bone of an evil god. Sissel's voice snapped him out of his head, and she smirked that she figured he'd try something new, maybe even with his monsters, then told him she wouldn't use her own this round because it'd be a pain if they got wiped out, and she promised she wasn't there to hurt him. Her words felt like a crack in the door, so he surged ahead, yelling that accidents can strike any time. At his signal, the wolf, the slime, and the dragon burst free in sync, slamming into Sissel from every angle at once. Sissel's calm finally shattered, her eyes popped wide as surprise hit. She blurted that he was cheating, shouting that she just said she wouldn't use her own monsters. But her protest landed exactly like he'd predicted. He threw the creatures at her as a decoy, then swung around behind her with total certainty, knowing a strike from the rear could shatter even humanity as strongest. As his dagger surged toward her back, she didn't even fully turn, just spoke in a calm voice, admitting his plan was brilliant, and then his strike got effortlessly stopped. With a contemptuous snap of her power, she swatted his 3 monsters away like flies, and they tumbled through the air, helpless and lost. Ken Otto froze in pure disbelief, his thoughts spinning out of control, because in one single instant, all 3 of his companions were wiped out, yet he scrambled to reach them and saw they were still alive. But then the real terror hit. How in the world did that happen? Guilt hit him hard, and he rushed to apologize, admitting that their sacrifice had let him close the distance, but none of it mattered in the end. Before he could even grab another thought, Sissel's voice slashed right through his confusion, weapon pressed to his throat. "Yup, I win," she said, ice calm. Kanado stayed on his knees and demanded how she even handled his 3 monsters. Sissel explained that if you move fast enough, afterimages just kick in on their own. Then she shrugged off the monsters with a quick little finger flick, like she'd done to others the other day. Kanado let out a shaky laugh and finally admitted, "I surrender." Her overwhelming power hit like a wave, and he couldn't even process it. He was completely stunned by how effortless it felt. His defeat hit the crowd like a thunderclap. Everyone felt it, and Ansa burst out in a roaring fit of approval, calling it a great match and shouting that he'd earned a whole new respect for tamers. He looked up and a tiny smile lit his face the moment he realized the mocking would finally stop, and Sissel turned to him, asking straight if he was satisfied. When he said yes, she leaned in and offered him a place. "Will you be my companion, Articuan?" Without a second thought, he agreed. 2 days later, this brand new duo stood right in front of the massive entrance to the Aranka lab, staring it down like it was about to blow their world open. Cecil shot him a look, asking if he wanted to watch her fight. He just nodded back, grinning as he said he already knew how deadly she was against people, but he couldn't wait to see how she battled monsters for real. Then he made it clear he was totally in. In the blink of an eye, that colossal labyrinth beast was already sprawled there, dead and finished, right in front of them. Sissel spun toward him, demanding his take. Kanado, drenched in sweat, confessed that even with his eyes locked on her, he couldn't track a single move, then begged her, "Do it again, please." What? She told him her real power was so subtle you couldn't even see it, and a rank monster didn't stand a chance, wiped out in an instant. Then the shock hit him hard. Sissel said that to truly prove it, they'd have to step into an S-rank labyrinth, but the rules barred an E-rank like him from entering. Determination flared across Kanado's face. "Then let's go take the test." When Sissel made that declaration, a bright spark lit up her face. She couldn't hold back her excitement and told him he'd take the promotion exam. Then she blurted out her dream, an SSS rank, until Kanado cut in with a reality check. To even step into an S-rank labyrinth, he'd have to earn S-rank first. A flicker of doubt hit his face, like the thought scared him, but Sissel leaned in fast and promised she'd back him with a recommendation so he could take the exam. Her bright smile vanished in a heartbeat, and pure, stomach-dropping horror took over. Something awful hit her like a wave of realization. If he'd reached the top rank fate could grant, what did that doom him to? The answer slammed into her hard, and she was left utterly shaken. Right before the gnarled, towering entrance of an SS-rank labyrinth, Nymer's party stops dead in their tracks, pigtails and all, because the woman admits she's freaking out even with their plan, while the hooded woman beside her waves it off like, "Don't worry, we're good." What? Nymer's eyes harden with pure resolve as he declares they'll punch right through, no arga required. Then he laughs with a cocky grin and adds that they don't need a tamer at all. The hooded woman blurts out with wild excitement that they'll smash through the dungeon and claw their way up to an SS rank. No help from the guy she's calling a loser now. Outside the Adventurers Guild, Kanado stands shoulder to shoulder with Ansa and that winged hat newcomer, and right then another adventurer comes barreling up, demanding to know if Kanado's heard anything about his old partner. He tilts his head just a little, hides his face behind an unreadable look, and confirms they've started throwing out those chicken tactics. The other guy fires back, asking why anyone would rely on such a busted plan. Then Ken Otto breaks it down. The strategy skips the weak monsters and goes straight for the boss with poison. He figures they just don't get how crucial knowledge is, so they toss it aside like it's nothing. The mustached adventurer mutters to himself that every capable adventurer should instantly understand how priceless the tamer's knowledge really is. Then ANSA stands right there in front of a shut door. He shoves the door open, and the young woman with a medical bag barrels in right behind him. The door swings open to a huge, silent room, bare walls, harsh white light, and nothing inside but a couple of other doorways lurking in the emptiness. As soon as ANSA steps in, he whips around to the person right next to you and shoots out an apology for the way he. Inside the ready room, he faces Kanato and Sissel and starts speaking, praising how wildly Kanato has grown, then saying he finally gets why Kanato is so dangerous for SSS rank. He picks up right where they left off and tells Sissel, "Yeah, I know, you already told me we formed a party together." Their talk gets yanked to a hard stop by a booming voice. This powerfully built, pointed-eared man strides in, calls Ansa master, and barks that they ditch the pointless small talk and get moving. Kanato's face tightens at the man's dismissive tone, and Ansa swings around fast to formally introduce the newcomer. He introduces the man as Raja, an SSS rank adventurer, ready to step in as the examiner for that day's promotion test. A flicker of recognition snaps across Kanato's face. He blurts out if they've met before, and Raja instantly hits him with the idea that maybe he's really thinking of his brother, Razzle. The name snaps into focus. Hinato suddenly remembers Razzle, the adventurer who tangled with him at the guild. Raja listens, jaw tight with worry, and the grim look on his face seals it. They really are brothers. Roger's calm snaps in half. He roars that Kanato beat his big brother so badly he's been depressed and shut himself away ever since, and Kanato shoots back that Razzle started it and got what he deserved. Just as Ant scolds Kanato for turning everything ugly, Roger's rage finally explodes and he screams that he'll kill him. Right between them, Ant snaps his arms out to seize control, then points both sides toward each other and starts explaining the test rules. He says the rules are dead simple. They'll fight, and if Kanato can snag a draw or anything better, he's through. Meanwhile, both fighters lock eyes, and the air turns razor-thick with pure hostility. He gets hit with a savage, instant onslaught. Raja roars and swings his blade in a brutal arc, trying to split him clean in two. Kanato gets his breath stolen by the sheer killing intent behind that first blow, and Roger snaps. The first strike decides everything, roaring that he's going to kill him for real. He reacts in a flash. He dives low and slides out of harm's way, just as that deadly blade bites the ground where he was standing a heartbeat ago, and Roger's cocky smirk never leaves his face. Raja keeps slamming in his relentless attack, taunting his opponent's tight defense and begging him to strike back, while the guild receptionist watches on in mounting panic. Her worry spikes and the receptionist swivels toward Sizzle, blurting that they need to step in right now, because Roger kicked things off with a surprise attack and still kept playing dirty. Sizzle stays totally calm. She reassures the worried receptionist with a warm smile, saying it's all good and the match will be over in no time. As the battle rages on, her confidence looks totally misplaced. Raja keeps driving forward, and from where you stand, it's starting to look like Kanado's about to get crushed. The examiner hands him the reins of his fury, and he cackles like a maniac as he roars at his opponent to drop dead with every brutal swing of his sword. But his frantic strike tears open a gap, and Roger's wild, manic grin snaps into sudden shock the moment he locks eyes with Kanado's icy, calculating stare. In a blink, Kanado rockets forward and lands one brutal punch, boom. Raja gets blasted backward into the wall, and his weapon clatters to the ground. Raja crumpled to the ground in stunned silence, and that one brutal hit had completely wrecked him. The guild receptionist froze in total confusion when everything snapped sideways. She couldn't believe it, because after that surprise attack, he should have been the one caught at a disadvantage. He calmly told him he'd already seen this coming, that his opponent would cheat, and from the very first second, he'd been braced and ready for it. Ansa, the guild master, cut in and pointed out that Kanado looked shocked by the first strike. Kanado nodded and admitted it, then snapped back that Raj's moves were painfully slow, and the examiner on the floor could only fume in disbelief, railing at the loss. That thought hit him like a bolt of lightning. Then he realized the real danger. Was their slowness a planned trap meant to lull him into dropping his guard? His mind sprinted, snapping this tactic into place like a memory he couldn't ignore. Raj's brother, and unease hit him hard as the puzzle finally clicked. He then unveiled his own secret counter, because if it was a trick, he'd pretend to collapse his stance just to see how Roger would react, and that sealed it for him. The slowness wasn't a feint at all, it was real. Still trying to wrap her head around it, the receptionist demanded, "If you knew Raja was slow, why dodge and weave this whole time?" She challenged his logic, but he cut in. His real plan wasn't cruelty, it was timing. He was lining up the perfect counterattack to bring Raja down without landing a killing blow. Ansa snapped the last piece into place and finally exposed why Kanado was holding himself back, because Nimers had ordered him, clearly and specifically, to stay restrained. The guild master locked eyes with Kanado and drove the point home, while Nimers had already begged him, from this moment on, hold back. He swore he'd shown real restraint, and Ansel watched with a small, satisfied smirk as he said how much Arda had grown. With that, Ansa slammed a hand onto his shoulder and roared the official verdict, "You pass." His proclamation boomed through the guild hall, and just like that, Argo Billion was officially stamped as an SSS rank adventurer. He didn't just claim he'd reached a new status, he shoved a spotless white card in front of everyone, stamped with 3 letters that screamed the top rank. Clutching his fresh card, Kanado stood there beside Sissel and the receptionist as she announced, straight-faced, that with this rank he could step into any labyrinth he wanted. Sissel leaned in and asked what they should do next, while Kanado stared in awe at how effortlessly he'd shot up to SSS. Sissel just smirked and reminded him she'd already told him he'd be fine. He admitted that once you can go anywhere, the choices start to crush you, and the receptionist, bright as a sunrise, chirped that they should throw a promotion party first to celebrate and think it through, while Cinnamon Sissel clearly agreed as she called out his name. But just like that, the celebration died. Right in front of them, 2 familiar faces were collapsed on the floor, shaking uncontrollably. His eyes shot wide with disbelief the second he recognized them, and one stunned thought hammered through his head, "You guys." Lifting their heads through the dirt, their eyes screamed desperation. Rebecca and Norsha tore into the air with one desperate cry, begging Arga to save them. Hours earlier, deep inside a collapsing, vine-choked ruin, the air sat thick with danger nobody dared to say out loud. Inside, Nimra and his 2 female companions sprint like their lives depend on it, pounding up ancient stone stairs as an unseen threat closes in behind them. Their escape gets obliterated in an instant. One massive stone column crashes down, wrecks the steps behind them, and blasts debris through the air. Nemura slams on the brakes and tells everyone, "This is it, we can't go any farther," because their pursuer is simply too strong, but his hooded companion snaps back, urging him to keep fighting and reminding him of his dream. Becoming an SS rank adventurer. From the darkness under them, their nightmare finally steps into view, a hulking monster with blazing white eyes and a grin packed with razor-sharp fangs. When the beast comes into view, the pigtails woman begs for a retreat, drag the fight back with a returned stone, yet Nimra snaps that there's no way out, then in a brutal twist he shoves her off the ledge, and she tumbles straight toward the monster. His hooded companion blasts his name into the air, demanding answers, and Nemura yells back that Rattlin is going to be okay. She can dodge and hold her ground with defense magic. Then Nemura snaps that this is their one shot to break free, and they'll return later, just as the words hit the silence. He and the other woman slam the return stone to life, bathed in its blinding glow, and they vanish in an instant, while he lets out one last, hollow apology to Rattan, whose face twists with terror and betrayal as she's left to square off with the beast alone. Back in the present, Kanado just stares blankly while Nymra finishes his tale. Cold words spill from Kanado as they dump Rattan and bolt. Nymra snaps back in desperation, calling it a selfish cop-out, then begs Arga to help them rescue her. He smirks as he stares down his old leader, spits out how a tamer's knowledge should let them beat that creature, and needles him for how they're still depending on him after kicking him out. Then he lands the final blow. If he comes back, are they actually planning to undo his banishment? He weighed their desperate plea for a heartbeat, and the hooded woman pressed him. Were his feelings for real, or was he just brooding over his banishment? He lifted his gaze with a stone-calm face and finally spoke, "I'll help you." His yes barely left his mouth before a cold caveat slapped it away. Then he smirked like he couldn't care less, saying it was a shame. But as a lowly E-rank adventurer, Nimmerus was locked out of SS-rank labyrinths, and Nimmerus's face twisted with pure frustration. The two adventurers recoiled in disgust, Nymra snapping curses at the damned tamer, furious that their effort went nowhere. Then, as they started to stomp away, Nymra suddenly froze, realizing something important. He shot his adventurous card up with a cocky grin, and there it was, freshly stamped high-rank status. With a joyful laugh, he admitted he'd totally forgotten because he'd just been promoted. Nymra just froze, jaw-dropping as he sputtered about an impossible SSS rank, accusing Kanado of forgery. But Kanado stayed ice calm, confirmed the promotion, let Nymra step into the SSS rank labyrinths, then his face hardened fast as he snapped. "So what did you mean earlier about?" "What?" Beside him, Cecil hissed her disgust and demanded how he could ever call himself companions with that kind of trash. Then Kanado let out a wry, breathy smile, admitting he was still shocked by himself. His face hardened and he delivered the vow with no room to doubt. He was going to come save her. Then he laid down his terms without a shred of doubt. He'd rescue Rattlin and hand her to the guild, but he'd do it solo. When he told his old companions he didn't need them and they'd only slow him down, Nemurus erupted in furious outrage. He turned his back on them and declared that he and Cecil would take over the labyrinth conquest, watching the hooded woman's eyes flare wide in stunned disbelief as she finally clocked his companion, Cecil, the world's strongest. Nymra's gasp rang out right after, insisting it was impossible for someone with Cecil's legendary name to be standing with Kanado. Still stunned, the hooded woman clocked the moment in an instant, and Nemura grudgingly saw it too. While they plotted their move, Kanado and Cecil stood shoulder to shoulder, and their uneasy new partnership finally clicked into place. He faced the Exalt Labyrinth's terrifying entrance, wrapped in giant, ancient tree roots. Then Cecil asked for a second to power up her monsters, and he snapped back, demanding to know why she'd go this far just to help him. She brushed off his worry with a welcoming smile, calling his old companions selfish scum with not an ounce of remorse, and then made it crystal clear he owed them nothing. He made it crystal clear he wasn't helping, couldn't even if he wanted to, because he figured Ritun was already dead, and with a cold smirk he let the truth slip. This wasn't a rescue at all, it was his revenge. He said his revenge was simple. He'd steamroll the very opponent those jerks couldn't even land a scratch on. His eyes narrowed with savage focus. He vowed they'd choke on bitterness. Then his finger shot toward his system command, the one marked fuse. Cecil caught the pattern and asked if that was really all of his revenge. Then Cecil grinned, because this was only the beginning. A terrifying, brilliant light burst from his monster, like a promise of what came next. The light surged brighter, washing everything in a blinding glow. Cecil just stared in stunned disbelief, while Kanado stayed cool and calmly called it out. It was evolution in action. As the lights died down, Cecil stared in shock at the thing rising before her. She'd never laid eyes on a monster like that. Ken Otto just kept his gaze forward, grinning with anticipation, desperate to find out what it would do next. In those winding stone halls, a brand-new fox-like beast, sleek, strong, and evolved, ripped into a metal stag beetle and smashed its armored shell to pieces with pure, brutal force. They pushed deeper into the dungeon, and Kanado couldn't hide his disappointment. Nothing looked impressive yet, not until they'd reached the SS rank zone. Cecil then snapped that Kanado and his old crew were just too weak, forced to slink around with cowardly tricks even inside a low-level labyrinth. As they press on, Kanado snarls about his old crew's incompetence, calling it pure stupidity to lean on a busted strategy like chicken tactics. He points out that trying to poison the boss when it's immune to status effects is just a waste. yet as he talks, the labyrinth slams down and vaporizes one of his summoned beasts, and he still can't shake the itch of a suspicious inconsistency in the story. Sissel feels it too, something about his own tale doesn't add up, and then it clicks. The labyrinth's boss is a vampire. Ken Otto nods, agreeing. He even admits his biggest worry wasn't the danger, it was the fact that his old party somehow managed to retreat at all. She tells him vampires are proud as hell, and when their prey slips away, they get furious, using magic like a weapon to slam the return stones back into place. He agrees with the cold logic. No matter how many party members you feed to a vampire as blood bags, it still wouldn't be enough to make a typical vampire spare the rest. A lightning bolt thought hits Sissel, and she blurts out her newest theory. Maybe the vampire isn't a regular monster at all, but a mutant. Right before that massive arched doorway, she blurts out, if it's a variant like a vampire princess or a vampire noble, it's SSS, way stronger than even SS-rank vampires. Why would a nobler, stronger being let them walk away? Sissel shrugs and says, stuff like that just happens sometimes. No warning, wham, a sword rockets through the air, screaming straight for the heavy stone door. The blade explodes on impact, shards raining down with useless clatters across the floor, and Hinata just stares, completely unbothered, expression stone cold. He stood there stone calm, staring at the doorway swung wide. Then a voice clawed out of the dark, cackling like, nice dodging that blood sword attack. From the shadows she burst into view, young, elegant, and unmistakably a vampire noble, with a smirk that dripped confidence as she introduced herself as the great vampire princess, Reina La Rilcia, insisting they should feel honored they managed to survive her first strike. Her big dramatic announcement barely even registered on him. His eyes narrowed the moment he locked in the truth, and he confirmed it. She really was the cis-rank mutant they'd been expecting, the vampire princess. Then he snapped his focus to his companion and spoke straight to Sissel, and she met his gaze with rock-solid confidence, saying she'd stay out of the fighting and put the battle fully in his hands. As she threw her trust at him, a sinister dark circle started to ripple out of thin air on the stone floor right in front of Sissel, snatching his breath in an instant. From a swirling portal, two monsters tore into the world, one a savage wolf, the other a hulking brute wearing a horned ram's skull like a crown, and Kanado stood right in the middle, calm as can be, waiting for the fight to ignite. Staring at the screen, Riene, vampire princess in all attitudes, smirked like she'd already won. She clocked him as a tamer instantly, then dismissed the whole idea with ruthless confidence, laughing that monsters beneath her could never reach her. In the ruins of a shattered chamber, Riene, the vampire princess, squares up with deadly confidence, while her ram-skulled monster familiar looms at her side like a silent executioner. Across from her, Kanado and Sissel brace themselves, flanked by Lily, the snarling wolf. Reina declares she'll remember his name, and as the words hit the air, Kanado's mind snaps into place. Vampire Princess Reina. If she's an SSS-rank monster, then that brutal defeat he and the others took suddenly clicks. Every shattered piece finally makes perfect sense. His face tightens with pure resolve. He declares she's the first SSS-rank monster he'll take down, and that's exactly why he'll never, ever forget her. He then bursts in and introduces himself as Arga, barking at her to memorize the name of the one who's going to end her, and right in that moment, Riene's eyes narrow as her smug confidence gets swallowed by a quiet, simmering fury. Her calm snaps in an instant, Fang's beard and face twist with rage, and she snarls at how dare he look down on her. With a furious scream, she charges forward and snaps, calling him an insolent fool as her clawed hand shoots out to land the strike. When Kanado gets her order, he whips his arm forward and barks a sharp command. Lala, Lily, go. Lily the wolf snaps into motion at once, white blur, head-on clash with Riene's attack, and a thunderous swipe from her massive, clawed paw. The moment their attacks collide, a massive shockwave hits, and both fighters get blasted backward, soaring through the air like they've been thrown by a cannon. The moment Lily hits the ground, she doesn't get to breathe. Right then, the ramskull monster rockets forward, horn first, smashing its new target for fresh gore. While her monstrous familiar barreled at the wolf's charge, Riene suddenly got slammed by a whole new headache. Avalia's projectiles kept pelting her, forcing her to skid back, shrieking in fury as she barked, "Bees move." Two bees slammed together with a deafening crash, spinning into a wild cyclone of fur and bone. The hit slammed into the ram skull monster, and it staggered backward, its whole momentum got snapped in half. Ignoring the chaos as the monsters fought, Riene shot through the air and came down on Kanado with razor-sharp, predator-like precision. She snarled, her voice dripping with poison, then snapped an order, "Die with regret," as she closed in for the kill. But her strike never even hit, because with impossible speed, he snatched her arms mid-swing, froze her entire assault in its tracks, and dropped the vampire princess down for good. He studied the situation with cool precision. clocking just how deadly her SSS rank strength really was. And yeah, he'd already trained Lala and Lily to survive SSS rank labyrinths, but this fight hit harder than he ever expected. She stared at him stunned and admitted she wasn't trying to win at all. She'd only been testing his monster's power, using the fight to measure what they could truly do. His grip tightened like a vice, a low curse slipped past his lips, and fury surged as she fought to break free of his hold. Her rage curdled fast into dawning horror, her eyes snapped wide as she stared at him, the question ripping out of her throat, "Are you human?" Her question about his humanity got answered the loudest way possible, by a vicious kick that blasted her backward across the clear air. She screamed in agony as she skidded across the ground, her body taking the brutal hit, until she finally clawed to a stop. He watched her with steady eyes, admitting she was the toughest enemy he'd ever faced, but right then he threw in one vital warning: she was still not as strong as. Before she could even process what he said, he was suddenly on top of her. He slammed another brutal blow into her midsection, and shock and pain flashed across her face. Staggering backward, she refused to break, and with a sharp motion she reached for her side, pulling out a short ornate dagger that ignited with a faint, crackling magical aura. She lunged in, howling a curse at him, and he snapped at her for losing control as he casually sidestepped her desperate thrust with a lightning-quick, perfectly controlled strike, he slammed his blade down and shattered her dagger into a scatter of deadly splinters. His follow-through snapped into motion, his hand smashed into her with a jolt so hard it sent shock ripples through her whole body. The impact slammed the wind out of her, and as that brutal force crushed through her, she gasped, blood spilling from her mouth. Her shock and pain snapped into raw, burning fury. She glared at him and swore she'd never forgive Arga. Then, with a violent surge of dark energy, she raised her hands and vowed to erase him using her deadliest magic. She screams her ultimate spell, and a roaring storm of endless magical arrows bursts into the sky, lighting up the air with deadly intent. The shots slice through the air, each one promising a guaranteed kill. She smiles and claims that anyone who's ever been hit by this magic has never survived. Even with the assault crashing in, Kanato and Sissel stay eerily calm, staring as it closes in, faces locked, emotions impossible to read. Her confidence detonates into a wild roar as she screams for her opponent's end. He doesn't budge an inch, standing his ground with zero fear as the lethal barrage barrels toward him. Her triumphant grin snaps in half, pure disbelief floods her face. He tilts his head and barks a quick order to the tiny dragon on his shoulder, demanding a dragon breath for Lala. In response, the tiny creature cracks its jaws wide and somehow funnels a shocking amount of energy into that little frame of its. It detonates into a spinning storm of pure energy, surging forward in a brutal blast to collide head-on with the incoming attack. The dragon's fiery breath crashes into the front line of magical arrows and smothers them in seconds, turning the tide before anyone can react. The vampire unleashes its ultimate magic, but it can't stop the dragon. Every projectile just evaporates into nothing while that brutal breath barrels forward without mercy. He watches the steam rip apart, and there, Riene, the vampire princess, stands exposed, trembling against a scorched wall as her ultimate strike gets wiped clean instantly. Her eyes go wide with pure terror, and the confidence she carried just evaporates. He calmly tells her that her brutal magic could have wiped out anyone, except the one person it can't break, a tamer. He calls the fight done and tells her goodbye, but Riene suddenly shrinks into a meek plea, then flips the script and declares her surrender, leaving him stunned and totally thrown for a beat. Her pride crumbles to nothing, tears pour down her face as she sobs and screams apologies, then begs him with her whole heart not to kill her. His companions reel as everything just collapses out of nowhere. Sissel blurts out in stunned amazement at what they're seeing, while Kanato himself is completely rattled by Reina's full, tear-soaked surrender. Sissel, clearly loving the whole spectacle, leans toward Kanato and marvels at how unbelievably rare it is to see a proud vampire princess weeping and begging for her life, while Kanato stays stuck, unsure what move he's supposed to make next. When he hesitates, Riene snaps in with a shockingly stiff, princess-level tone, calling him Argue-sama, and says she's got a request, while Sissel's excitement skyrockets, pushing him to hear her out right now. That sudden act of respect knocks the wind out of him, and he can only stammer as tears shimmer in her eyes. "What do you want?" Riene swallows hard, starts her plea, and begs to use his power. She stares up at him, eyes burning with desperate grit, then drops the impossible: "Please kill my father." Those jaw-dropping words slam into the room and freeze Kanato and Sissel on the spot. Silence hits like a wall, then all he can blurt is, "What?" He just stood there in that huge tiled cavern, staring at the vampire princess, and Kanato couldn't believe the words as he repeated her shocking demand: "Kill your father." And Riene answered his question and said this all started a month ago, and as she talked, Kanato's mind clicked. There had to be something wild for a proud vampire princess to even ask for patricide. He urged her on, and Sissel murmured a calm thank you for stepping forward. Her tale kicked off in the very room she shared with her father, a regal vampire noble, when 3 shadowy hooded clergy burst in, so she and her dad thought they could wipe them out like always. Renee said this meeting felt totally different. Those clergy were freakishly strong, and all you could see were their unsettling smiles with their faces lurking in the dark. Her whole body felt like it couldn't handle their power. Then the intruders stormed in, pinned her father down, and jabbed a syringe into the side of his neck with some mystery drug, and just like that, they disappeared into thin air. The substance's effects were horrifying. Renee told me that ever since that day, her father's mind has been slipping away, bit by bit, until he's nothing but a mindless savage beast. Back in the present, that memory tore fresh tears down his face. She finally admitted she couldn't stand seeing him like this anymore and pleaded to let him go, then heartbreakingly said the only way out was to kill him. Renee's painful plea still hung in the air when Sissel snapped his head toward Kanado and demanded what he planned to do, and Renee added that her own power just couldn't measure up to her father's, so she'd been waiting for someone strong enough to take him down. As Kanado weighed the offer, Renee's eyes hardened, tears still burning there, but her face turned into pure steel as she forced herself to push the plan through. His silent nod hit the vampire princess like a spark, and she wasted no time pouring out heartfelt gratitude. Kanado laid out his reasons straight to the point. If they didn't take down her father, they'd never reach the labyrinth's end. And to top it off, he confessed with a grin that he couldn't resist the curiosity. Sissel laid out her suspicions about the drug that was used on Reina's father, and he listened as her unease sharpened, because the clergy attackers didn't fit at all. Those groups usually worship holy magic and look down on medicine. He snapped his focus back to the vampire princess and agreed to her request on the spot. Then he threw in one warning. Renee's eyes burned with resolve as she swore she was ready for whatever came for her. Then she inched closer, cheeks burning with a shy blush, and asked him to be gentle since it was her first time, only for him to go pale with confusion, recoil back, and snap that he needed to know what the hell she thought she was ready for. Sissel snapped in right away, shouting that Reina was a pervert and the price definitely wasn't her body. Then Kanado, totally flustered, blurted that he meant making her his companion, not anything weird. Reina's clarification didn't just land, it stunned her even harder, and the moment her eyes widened, her thoughts sprinted from "we're close" to "we're marrying," leaving Kanado so exasperated he couldn't even speak. He laid down his demands with a cold stare, snapping that since he didn't trust her, he'd break her into obedience and lock her under his control, and he warned that if she so much as tried something sketchy, he'd toss her into the shadows and keep her there. Renee took his words and spun them into something else, cheeks blazing as she blushed. Then she decided that once she proved she was trustworthy, he'd marry her. He tried to ignore that, though, and impatiently demanded she just lead them straight to her father. Tight on her heels, the 3 of them started down a twisting stone staircase that plunged straight into the earth. Sissel demanded if this was where Reina's father was hiding, and Reina nodded, saying the man had this weird obsession with being underground. He scanned the dark cavern, and the whole place screamed vampire lair in his gut. Then Sissel chimed in that there weren't just one way in, but several passages plunging deeper into the underground complex. Then he cornered Renee and grilled her, asking if she'd spotted any dumb-looking guys around lately. After a beat, she shook her head, then caught herself and said there was a group of 3, 1 man and 2 women. He stood inside the cavern with a grim face, while Sissel replayed every step that brought them there, remembering how Kanado's old party slunk through the dungeon with cowardice until they finally ran into Reina's father, and even worrying about Atone, left behind, wondering what condition she was in right now. The 3 of them press onward together, dwarfed by the massive, ominous underground chamber looming over them. As they pushed on, a stench hit them so hard Kanado snapped back in disgust, but Renee caught it instantly, her face tightening as she swore with grim certainty that her father was right there. Her sentence tore through the air, then a monstrous, clawed hand slammed the ground in front of them, detonating the stone into shattered rubble. From the churn of dust and wreckage, a nightmare rose up tall and bony, with erect body and those grotesquely overbuilt arms that dragged near the ground, while thick steam roared from its hulking shape as it loomed right in front of them. The creature chewed on something we couldn't even see, and it looked downright foul, so Kanado snapped, disgust burning in his gut, and shouted, "Lulu, come out." He laid out his plan to Sissel. Yeah, the creature didn't look like a big threat, but his slime and glue had detox powers, and this was a last resort move he was ready to risk. The little slime quivered the moment it felt the tension in the air. Right before it could move, the slime erupted into a blinding glow. Kanato stared, frozen in shock as he realized this was the exact moment it was evolving. A tiny creature suddenly exploded with raw energy, and it slammed both him and Renee right out of their comfort zone. When the light died out, Lulu transformed. Now she was a huge, ink-black octopus-like monster, her wide, unblinking eyes locked straight ahead. Its new shape was a pitch-black slime, and Kanado read from the status screen that it was a Shaggoth. Then the numbers hit, its stats had skyrocketed. He'd never faced a monster like this before, and that fact alone made his skin crawl. As Kanato stared in confusion at the creature's beginnings, Sissel's face hardened. She remembered a past fight with an evil god and told him a Shoggoth had been one of its deadly subordinates. She laid out the horror and it all clicked. Those evil god monsters don't just attack your body, they poison your mind, spreading mental contamination until people lose their grip and go insane. Her words snapped Kanato awake. He caught that same evil god stench hanging around Reina's father, and it clicked with the drug that got injected into him, proving this was the real trigger behind the madness and the chaos that had twisted him. Driven by his own conclusion, Sissel guessed that the evil god's presence, and that sickening stench tied to it, might have lit the fuse for Lulu's sudden evolution, though she couldn't swear to it. The truth hit Riene like a thunderclap. She clenched her fist and finally saw through the clergy for what they really were. "Why would you do this to my father?" she cried out, the pain in her chest tearing wide open. Her grieving speech got ripped away the moment her father's monstrous shape burst into view. Then Kanado whipped his gaze to her, demanding one last answer. Was she really ready to have him put that creature down? Riene clenched her resolve and nodded, giving her consent. With her blessing, he hardened his resolve, then snapped, "All right," and whipped around to face the grotesque beast as it charged straight at him. He lunged in and met the charge head-on, blade thrust forward, because he knew that even a vampire noble with ruthless regeneration couldn't survive decapitation, so he slammed his blade in to sever its head. Just as he surged forward, something flashed into view and slammed on the brakes. His bold charge died in mid-step, and the moment he understood what was ahead, his face twisted into pure, jaw-dropping shock. His eyes go wide with pure shock as the monster's massive fist slams to a stop just inches from his face. That tiny pause costs him everything. Right as the monster's fist slams in, he's launched tumbling backward across the dirt, and Reina screams his name, furious that he blinked at the worst possible second, because the next follow-up blows pulverized the exact spot where he stood a heartbeat ago. He scrambles out of the way as the monster's creature hammers the ground over and over. Every blow detonates the stone floor in a savage, mindless rampage. Dodging yet another strike, he hears Riene's voice slice through the chaos. She demands he carve out an opening, keep his distance, and drive himself back up from the ground, and when he grinds out his teeth, he confirms he's got it. The creature won't show mercy. It growls deep in its throat, then lunges forward again with a brutal roar. It whips wildly, and he has to fling himself to the side just as another earth-shattering punch annihilates the ground he was standing on a heartbeat ago. He scrambles for a fresh plan, realizing that a blindfold trick won't cut it to stop the beast. He only needs a sliver of time, and then it hits him, the new power he just unlocked. He fires the plan into motion, yells at his buddy Lulu, and the little slime drifts forward, its body pulsing as it spits out crackling energy rings in tight circles. The rings shot through the air and slammed into the monster's skull, and when it jerked back, a violent surge of energy crackled around it as the mental attack finally hit. The strike lands and Otto just keeps his eyes fixed forward, driven by grim determination, while Riene and Sissel stare on, clinging to hope even as dread tightens their chests. That mental assault lands dead on, its monster face twists into a wordless scream as the unseen attack crashes into its mind. It thrashes like a storm, those giant arms whipping around as it roars and tortures everything in sight. The violent fit slams it into the ground, and it skitters and jerks there, totally helpless, confusion spell wrecking its mind while Kanata stands there watching. He lets out a breath, a tiny smile of relief flickering across his face, like the ability finally kicked in. Just as he finally exhales, Riene, calling him Arga, cuts in and asks if he's been spacing out. He has to admit he ran into someone awful, lost his focus, and mutters that even in their current state, they're still weighing him down. In the middle of his thoughts, Rainer's transformed father lies sprawled in the rubble, utterly helpless, his face twisted in pure agony. Sissel leans in and bets that the monster might be retoned, left behind after Kanado abandoned it, because vampires don't turn things to stone, so she suspects the evil god's curse woke them up, and then Kanado snaps that he wasn't anything but confused by how she looked. He wipes away the speculation and snaps his focus back to Reina, apologizes for the wait, and swears he'll finish this fast. Reina's father keeps clutching his head in raw, tearing agony on the ground, and his words do nothing. Tears spill down her face as she watches him suffer. Seeing Riene crumble, Kanado snaps into action. He orders Lulu to shut down the madness confusion right now. Sissel's stunned like, "What are you doing?" But Kanado explains it plain. Even though the creature is wrecked and out of its mind, it's still his companion's father. He pulls a tiny, razor-sharp blade, eyes locked in unwavering resolve. Then he steels himself and vows to let the creature go down with dignity, even if it's only for its last moments. Up on the ledge, Reina watches in stunned silence as Kanado braces himself, dagger up and ready, just as her father's monstrous shape rockets through the air to strike. He declares, stone-cold sure, this time won't end like the last. Then the creature snarls with a guttural roar and charges straight at him. The creature whips a massive arm toward him, but Kanado is already gone, ducking under the strike and raking his blade clean through the monster's bicep. He lands cleanly, and as the monster jerks back, it grips its severed arm and screams in rage. It lashes back with its other arm, but Kanata slips out of the clumsy blow again. Then that chopped-off hand spins through the air behind him. A severed limb slams down with a nasty wet thud right by Riene, and she chokes on a gasp, while Kanado's eyes blow wide as he realizes the monster is staring straight at its own smoking stomach. Black, viscous tendrils burst from the stump and snap together at breakneck speed, stitching the creature's entire arm back into place in a truly stomach-turning regeneration. He stares in pure disbelief. His attack should have shattered the Wonderot, but the thing just mends itself faster than he can blink, and he knows the battle won't end until he chops its head clean off. Right as you're about to roll out this new strategy, the monster's freshly regrown arm starts to shake, then swells up with twisted, bulging muscles. The mutated limb, now a towering, hardened club, crashes into the rocky ground with a devastating slam that rattles everything. The monsters strike SMASHES, a massive stone pillar, to bits, and rubble explodes through the air. While Riene watches from afar, her stomach drops as she can't figure out why Kanado would blow up something that important. Instead of pushing ahead, it grabs a huge chunk of the shattered pillar and readies it like a weapon, ready to smash the battlefield. He snaps out of the way at the last second as the monster hurls a massive rock, and it crashes into the ground right where he was standing a heartbeat ago. Spurned by the miss, the creature snarls with a guttural roar and instantly lines up its next projectile. He quickly figures it out. The monster's gone ranged, scared of getting sliced up close, and as long as those projectiles miss, he's confident he can hold his ground. His confidence cracks the moment a grim realization hits him, and he clenches his teeth, frustration boiling over. He whips his head away from the beast, yells for Sissel to help, and Reina clocks it instantly. If Sissel takes the monster down, it won't count as Kanado's win. He shoots back fast, promising them that the last hit will be his. He doesn't ask for a fight at all. He jabs a finger towards someone far off and orders Sissel to go grab that person. Raton lay death still on jagged rubble, exposed and powerless, like the whole world had just pinned him to the ground. He tells her he can't go all in while she's in the line of fire. He's terrified some stray attack will shatter her, and Sissel nods, ready to help, until she's shocked when Reina throws her hand up too, saying it'll be quick now that they've got backup. Kanado then braces to fully engage the monster with. With the plan finally kicking off, Sissel disappears in a blink, and Raton's jaw drops as she scrambles to figure out where she vanished to. Reina's father, the monster's creature, snaps his head left and right in panic, but he can't even catch the blur as Sissel rockets across the battlefield, dragging Reina straight toward the exposed Ratum. She's beside the beast in the blink of an eye. Riene, lifted up, winks at her transformed father and needles him with a grin like, "Nice try, you can actually track my moves with those eyes, huh?" Her words ignite the creature's rage, and it unleashes a guttural roar packed with pure, burning frustration. A hulking fist crashes into the ground, boom. A shockwave tears through the earth, scorching past Riene by inches as she yelps in terror. From a safe distance, Kanado watches the whole successful diversion play out, and with a faint smile, he quietly lets Sissel have his thanks for pulling it off flawlessly. Sissel yanks the monster's focus clean off Reina, slings her over her shoulder like it's nothing, and backs away, watching the stunned Raton gape as they disappear. As she hauls her along, Sissel tosses out a quick remark that the vampire princess is way heavier than she expected, then jokes she might want to rethink her diet. With the others finally out of immediate danger, Kanado snaps all his focus onto the monster and declares, "Now I can move freely, and it ends here." Raton, right behind him, stares in shock. She admits she couldn't even track a single one of his moves. When it answers his challenge, the creature hunches low, rage rolling off it in waves, and the ground beneath it groans, cracking and splintering from the sheer force it's unleashing. Kanado faced that monstrous terror head-on, shouted for Lala, and a massive skeletal beast with ram horns tore itself into existence. Then he roared at it to blast dragon breath and torch everything in sight. The skeletal beast obeyed, then unleashed a brutal torrent of energy that swallowed the whole area in a blinding flash. The blast tore through the air and left a choking wall of smoke, swallowing the whole battlefield, and from where Sissel stood, she snapped in frustration that she couldn't see a single thing through that brutal haze. Suddenly, a furious roar ripped through the smoke as the monstrous vampire hurled himself forward, like that attack didn't even touch him. The monster kept barreling forward, jaws snarling with a wicked grin as it burst out of the fading smoke. As it barreled forward, a tiny dark projectile burst out of nowhere and clocked it right on the side of the head, smashing the momentum to a dead stop. The creature staggered from the sudden hit, its head whipping sideways as it glared at the object, and the thing started to smolder right before its eyes. Kanado's projectile was nothing more than a tiny slime familiar, quivering like it was alive and about to dart off. While the monster's focus stayed locked elsewhere, Kanado shot in from above and behind, and his grin said the decoy had totally worked. Then, with a chilling calm on his face, he sank his teeth into it as its eyes snapped wide in horror. The beast unleashed a savage roar, and Kanado's eyes burned with unshakable grit as he dove down for the killing blow, while Sissel and Riene, from afar, could only stare in stunned silence. He rams his blade into the monster's neck with brutal force, and the hit rips its head clean off. Then the mangled body and severed head spin and tumble through the air. His blade bites through flesh and bone with surgical precision, and a dark spray erupts as the fatal cut lands. As the monster's towering body drops to the ground, he lands like a shadow and calmly turns his back on the defeated foe. He snaps his focus to Riene, perched on a rock and staring at the wreckage, tears pouring as she whispers a final, quiet goodbye to her father, and when Kanado clocks how broken up she is, he immediately asks, "Are you okay?" She gazes up at him, tears streaking her face, grief and grit battling in her eyes. Then she forces a shaky smile and tells him, through the hurt, that she's fine. She explains that watching her father still exist in that raging monster state would have been even worse, pure, unbearable agony. As that brutal truth lands, a wooden chest drops onto the ground, sealing the dungeon boss's defeat. Then Reina blurts out heartfelt thanks, calling him Argusama, and he just waves it off, telling her, "Don't mention it." His eyes lock onto the reward as he drops to his knees beside the chest, and when he spots it, he knows it's a boss drop. Then he blurts out what it could possibly hold. Then as he studies the chest, Sissel's gasp rips his focus away, because on the ground nearby there's no monster head at all, just the severed head of a woman, eyes frozen wide and dead. The head looks absolutely ghastly, pale skin, a face stuck in silence. Then out of nowhere, its eyes ignite with unnatural light and the air snaps with crackling energy. Kanado froze, staring at that head that was floating in midair, and Sissel's urgent voice sliced through the silence as she widened her eyes in panic, warning him the thing was still there. He didn't even get one full breath to register her words before the severed head started swelling sickeningly, its flesh bubbling and stretching at a terrifying, unnatural speed. When the horror surged violently, Sissel snapped into action, slinging the unconscious Riene over her shoulder and hauling her back as the Riene screamed at Kanado, racing away from the danger that was about to strike. He brushed off her desperate plea, jaw set and eyes locked as he charged straight into that throbbing object. Seconds later, a cataclysmic blast ripped through the chamber, bursting right from where the head had been. The blast slammed them back, blasting up a wall of dust and wreckage, and from the edge of the danger zone, Sissel and the suddenly startled Reina whipped around, eyes wide, watching in horror as Sissel screamed Reina's name into the chaos. After the brutal fight, a massive burst detonates at the center, and a towering wall of dust and smoke explodes outward. Everything gets swallowed, and no one can see a thing. From a safe distance, Rene watches the wreckage with wide, worried eyes, murmuring Kanado's name into the dusty air, while Sissel stands there with a steady, measured look. Sissel stared at the blast's sheer size and realized Reina's father had unleashed every last drop of his power all at once. Then she muttered that she'd actually thought the evil god's strength was seriously amped up, and since Kanado had leveled enough to keep up with her every move, she couldn't wrap her head around why he still wouldn't take off. Her brow tightens and she quickly shrugs it off as nothing more than a guess. Right then, inside the blast zone, Kanado drops to his knees under Luli the slime's shelter, and it clicks in an instant. Rene's father just hit him with a mental attack, an evil god power he recognizes as mental contamination. Sissel blurts out her theory, wondering if someone trapped his movements for good, while Rene, staring through the smoke, erupts in a mix of panic and outright denial. She snaps her head around to Sissel, eyes bulging with sheer panic, and blurts out, could her assessment really be right? Right then, Kanado bursts out of the fading smoke, looking totally untouched. Reina gasps and blurts his name, finally relieved he's safe, and he just coolly tells her, that wasn't an attack, it was something awfully close. Then he drops the real secret behind his survival, gives a confident smirk, and explains that Lala the dragon had been watching his back, right as the explosion hit. He rolls out a tiny, ornate chest and swears it's a boss drop and a gift her father left her. Then when she asks if he opened it, he admits, yeah, I did. Next thing he says, her father's feelings latched onto him and mudded his mind. He snaps back to the moment right after the fight, towering over the vampire's severed head, and from the wreckage a panicked voice crawls out, "Please, please." That plea slammed through his thoughts, igniting a storm of emotions and flashing broken memories like shards of light. Sissel leans in, eyes locked, and asks if that plea was basically a demand to keep Riene safe, while Riene sobs beside her, whispering "father" under her breath, and Kanado finally admits, yeah, it was part of it, but it wasn't the whole thing. What? A crushing weight settles in as he thinks again, there's one more request coming. Back in the present, inside the Adventurers Guild, Kanado bursts in and declares he finally brought Ratun back, then slams her petrified body onto a table so everyone can see. Nymra screams out Raton's name and the whole battlefield goes stunned, while the nearby adventurers whisper and guess she must have been crushed by Medusa or Hydra. Ansa just watches it all unfold with a hard, silent stare. He whips his gaze back to Nymra's crew and flat out declares the labyrinth was a monster they couldn't crack because he cleared it solo and came back unscathed. Then he leans in, dares them to answer, so what are they planning to do next? In a flash of stunned silence, Nymra deflected it again, then snapped, demanding to hear how Kanado was going to reverse Raton's condition. His gaze locks onto Raton's stone-still body as he pushes harder and harder, convinced Kanado must have pulled a curse-breaking item out of a boss drop, and that there's no other explanation, period. Nymra and her hooded partner glare at Kanado, fists clenched, demanding answers. How will he bring her back, and did he really beat that labyrinth at all? Kanado just stares down, silent as the storm. He shoots them a cold stare and demands, "Why are you complaining instead of thanking me?" Then he calls out their blindness and selfish attitude, pressing them hard to answer who they think is to blame for all of this. When Nymra's shouting snaps his name into the air, Kanado freezes, furious at how stupid he'd been for mocking him earlier. After all, he just beat someone they couldn't even land a hit on, and now he's determined to make them choke on that same misery, cutting ties with them as fast as humanly possible. He flips the accusation right back on them, demanding, "Why am I the one chasing the cure when you're the ones who ditched Raton?" And the adventurers around him go completely silent, stunned by the blow. The accusation rips through the guild hall like wildfire. One adventurer yells that Nimra's party left their companion behind, and suddenly everyone else starts spitting out the same rumor about a tamer who was dumped by this exact group. In minutes, the whole crowd turns on Nimra, screaming that abandoning a comrade is the one unforgivable sin for any adventurer. As soon as the adventurers start arguing, it all snaps, mugs and bottles fly through the air, and they shout that Nymra and his crew are scum, turning the whole place into a blazing disgrace. Hood gets hit too, he gasps in pain and begs them to stop as the barrage keeps hammering on. An adventurer lunges forward and slams his shoulder into Nimra's back, barking that the trash better back off. Pinned to the floor with a boot grinding into his head, Nymra's teeth grind together, then dread hits like lightning as he realizes Kanado saw this exact ending coming and set up the guild handover on purpose to out them. Panic-struck, he spots the guild master Ansa and lunges his way to him, begging for help and insisting the others just don't get what's really going on. Ansa stares down with a grim face and admits the rumors are dead on. The guild master's stare cuts like a blade as he demands Nemorus straight up, "Did you dump your companion?" Nemorus scrambles for an explanation, but the crowd barrels over him with shouting. Ansa then slams the verdict down. No matter the excuse, that kind of behavior is disgraceful for an adventurer, and if it really was bandits, then why did only Raton get petrified while the others walked out just fine? He pressed on with his judgment, voice iron, as he faced Nymra and her companion, and he snapped that the only thing they both deserved was time to reflect and a punishment to match. The verdict landed like a hammer. Nymra and the hooded woman got stripped down to E rank, and the punishment hit their faces so hard you could practically hear the shock in their expressions. He blurted out in disbelief, sweat pouring down his brow as the loss hit him like a wrecking ball. 5 brutal years to reach S rank, and it was gone in the blink of an eye. With Nymra still reeling from the judgment, Kanado spun on his heel and stalked off in silence. No answers, no explanations. Behind him, the guild master snapped orders, demanding he find a way to undo Nymra's petrification, and couldn't resist adding that Nymra had gotten exactly what she deserved. He burst out of the guild hall and found Sissel waiting right there. She hurried up and asked if his business inside was finally done. Kanado burst back to his party and right there praised Riene's fresh dress, saying her dad's gift fit her perfectly. She gave a quick, polite thanks, then wasted no time. "So what happened to your revenge on your old party?" He flashed a shrugging smile and said it straight. Sure, they'd paid the price, but he didn't care about those people anymore. Riene nodded in agreement, grinning that landing on good companions was the best kind of revenge. Then she leaned in and asked what he was doing next, only for Kanado to lock in with a fierce stare and tell her he'd already made his choice. He spilled his real plan, pure revenge, and Rena's world cracked open, shocked because she thought everything was already over. Kanado then made it crystal clear. This fresh bout of revenge was for her father. He stared at her, locking in every word as he admitted the truth. Before it all ended, her father had one last request for him. He starts laying out the truth, telling how, at one point, Rene's father pulled him into it and showed him those images, while cloaked figures gathered in the shadows near an old, crumbling building. He says those weren't random thoughts at all. They were scraps of memory her father felt in his bones, burned into him when that fake clergy pumped him full of power from an evil ghost. Standing on a stone bridge with her crew, Sissel digs into what she just learned and shoots the question. Does he plan to use that burning clue to track them down and settle his revenge? He snaps his gaze to Rene and asks if she wants revenge too. Her eyes flare wide and fierce, and she answers with zero hesitation, yes. Her first burst of determination wavers, and a wave of doubt creeps in, quietly wondering if pulling Kanado and the others into her family's private mess is really the right move. Sensing Sissel's hesitation, Rebecca steps in fast to calm her down, telling her she doesn't need to hold back now that they're all in this together. Then Sissel nods immediately, saying she wanted to go after the culprits herself. Rebecca breaks it down, saying that if she's going to feed an evil god, then she feels obligated to handle every person tied to those vile, shadowy forces. With his party locked in and ready, Kanado flashes a confident grin and declares, "Our path is sealed, now we depart." Then he blasts out their first objective, track down the old building from that vision, and the whole crew pushes through a field of ancient, crumbling ruins. While they had no clue, three cloaked figures stood deep inside the same ruins, shoulder to shoulder in the harsh light, hood shadows swallowing their faces whole. Amid the ruins, one of the cloaked figures let out a resigned breath, insisting that if their target got taken down by humanity, as strongest, then fate had already sealed the deal. Another member snapped the idea down with a sharp click of their tongue, saying the vampire noble was truly defeated, just not by their hands, but by someone who held a second job. He pressed on, saying the noble's beheader was Arga, a tamer who served as the companion to that woman, and the smaller hooded figure beside him swore they'd also heard the vampire princess had slipped into their ranks, making him grimly admit that this would spell nothing but trouble for them. The smaller figure didn't flinch at all, just a sly smile curled on their lips as they said they had an idea. Their leader spun toward the gathered crowd, shot a hand up, and declared, "For the sake of our noble wish, fear nobody, no matter who they are." Meanwhile, Kanado marched beside Rene and Sissel, finally tasting revenge, and with a hard, unwavering stare, he swore they'd cut down every obstacle blocking their way. In a cold, white-lit facility, a senior clergyman in a dark hood gets shown around, his face all worn lines and shadow. The attendant checks in, "Is everything to your liking?" And the clergyman nods, saying it all feels perfect, and then he steps down the stairs into the huge, darker level below. He storms into a gigantic, humming lab, and the whole place feels alive. Massive containment pods sit everywhere, packed with bubbling liquid and laced together by thick pipes and ticking machines, while scientists in crisp white coats rush past, tending to grim experiments, and then up. Closing in on one of the scientists, the clergyman snaps that he's counting on them to keep their work going. Then his eyes lock onto a nearby pod where Rene's father has been twisted into a monstrous floating thing, suspended and lifeless. A cold, grim satisfaction flickers across the clergyman's face. Suddenly, boom, a deafening crash rips through the lab's entrance, and the clergyman and every scientist there snap around in panic as the wall explodes into rubble, blasting debris everywhere while cries of shock and pure confusion flood the room. The first breach detonates into a brutal explosion that rips through the entrance, slamming shockwaves through the machinery and flinging the scientists into the air as glass shatters and twisted metal rains down. In the chaos that follows, a ruthless dark power slices through the remaining scientists and drops them instantly, right where they stand. The hooded clergyman gapes in terror at the attacker and freezes when he recognizes her as the vampire noble's daughter. His thoughts crash and burn, praying that Arga, the tamer, hasn't shown up too. Then it hits him and he grumbles, annoyed at how damn famous that kid has become. As he wades through the wreckage, Kanato Arilion shows up with Rene right beside him, then flashes a smug grin like, "So I really did make a name for myself, because even some suspicious old man I've never met knows exactly who I am." What? The clergyman groans in sheer frustration, demanding to know how they found this hidden place, while Kanata stays ice calm and tells him a gentle vampire noble pointed the way. His face hardens, those eyes narrow into a razor-sharp glare, and then he declares it without hesitation, "I've come to avenge him." His vow of vengeance doesn't scare anyone. It earns him a cold, calculating stare from the head clergyman, who even manages to slip in a sharp question, "What are their real objectives?" He snaps around and roars at the subordinate below, ditching the whole talk act, then orders the scientists to unleash the magic beasts and tear into the intruders. At the command, a massive gate rumbled wide, and two hideous, scaly monsters burst out, jaws gaping and tentacles thrashing like they were ready to devour everything. The beast barrels toward Kanado while the clergyman, up in the air, realizes he's outmatched and uses the chaos to slip away, just as, below, one creature lifts a towering foot to stomp its target to dust. Before either monster can even swing, they're suddenly yanked out of the fight. Both get decapitated in an instant, their assault snuffed out before a single hit lands. The clergyman reels backward in total disbelief, eyes bulging as he finally catches that flash of motion as it wipes out the creations. He spots Reina standing in the middle of the carnage, and her power blows past everything he expected, so he blurts out that the vampire noble's daughter must really be that destructive, or maybe she's using some fusion technique. Kanado hears him and tells him straight, Reina hasn't touched fusion at all, even though the clergyman seems to be digging into her abilities. Kanada tells her that this is Riene's own inherent power, and that her hidden abilities finally snapped into place because her rage over her father being driven mad burned so hot it brought everything out. Sweating and shaking with fury, the clergyman clamps his grip on the staff and swears the impudent brats will pay, while Kanado strides up calmly, demanding the old man explain what he did to mess with his father. The clergyman snaps, hissing that Kanado is insolent. Riene's threat snaps off mid-sentence. She rockets forward in a blink, and her arm becomes a blur as she whips the clergyman's head clean off his shoulders. She stands over the clergyman's broken body, his head torn away, and Kanado rushes in, begging her to hold off on killing their captive until they can squeeze out the truth, while Reina stays ice calm and insists she only struck because that man made a suspicious move. Her eyes stay locked on him as she snaps, clear and final, she didn't kill him. To drive the point home, the clergyman's severed head starts talking, gasping with pure outrage, while Riene calmly admits she used blood magic to keep him alive, grinning as she says he's got a little time left, so they'd better use it wisely. Kanado corners the clergyman and fires back, asking if their real mission is to resurrect the evil god he once crushed, then casually snaps it off as just a dream. The clergyman's head explodes with rage, barking that calling it a dream is pure nonsense. He slams the truth down hard, reviving their Lord Evil God isn't some fantasy anymore, it's already within reach, and his organization has been chasing it. He keeps talking and then the truth slams down. They scrape together the final traces of the evil god's blood, then shoved it into different creatures as a reckless experiment, just to watch what would happen when the god finally came back. Hearing that, Reina's face snaps tight with rage, horror flooding her as she realizes her father didn't just get picked as a victim, he was framed as a noble sacrifice for a truly twisted experiment. The clergyman's grin turns vicious as he tilts his head, confirming her worst fears, and spits that every test subject is doomed to become food for his lord. He breaks down the whole scheme, promising to hand their god the amplified power trapped inside the test subjects, skin, bone, and all. Then he snaps his focus to Riene, calls her the sinful daughter who murdered their deity, and demands to know if she really understands what that means. With fanatical glee, he declares that their god will be reborn with power far beyond what he once had the moment she first wiped him out. Yet Reina doesn't blink. She coldly says her father was simply unlucky. Her face twists with rage as she stares down the clergyman's severed, floating head, spitting out bastard, furious to the bone, because the sickening truth is that her father's whole life was only grown to serve as some honorable offering to this so-called Lord Evil guy. While Kanado grinds through her rage, he stays ice calm and watches everything unfold, then snaps his attention to Sissel and Reina, saying the old man won't stop talking, and yeah, it's annoying, but it's also helped them. In the clergyman's mind, his words hit like a joke, just a dry laugh. Then the man snaps back that it doesn't matter if they know the plan, because they can't stop God's resurrection at all. He's deadly certain they're finished, swearing there's no way they're walking out of this place alive. Like his words were a command, the ground behind them starts to quake and boil. Then a monstrous, shapeless heap of dark sludge and innards erupts skyward, looming over the whole group. That grotesque thing reared up and started slurping up every corpse, monsters and humans alike, off the floor, and Sissel snapped to the truth with panic. It's a desperate magic, gulping flesh and blood to fuse it all into one horrifying body. The clergyman snaps his head up with manic delight, confirming her hunch. He fired the spell right before his decapitation, and cackles that everything here will turn into one bloody mass, fueling his Lord Evil God. With that declaration, the monstrous amalgam lunges at the group, unleashing a corrupt tide meant to swallow them whole, and the clergyman's voice blasts over the chaos as he screams that they're getting dragged into it too. Kanado reacts in an instant, smirking like he owns the moment, and laughs off the creature as way too slow to even touch them, then he blasts the clergyman with a brutal kick, sending his head soaring into the distance. He pivots on a dime and blasts out a scorching burst of destructive energy from his palm, smashing straight into the flesh amalgam, making it explode and crumble into nothing. The danger was finally shut down, and he started snapping the pieces of the man's scheme together, realizing that the long, rambling lecture was just a trick to buy time for the amalgam to keep spreading. With nothing left to learn, he coldly tells the old man goodbye and cuts him off for good. He turns his back on the clergyman as his body dissolves and he spits out one last curse. Then, no hesitation, Kanado locks eyes on his dragon Lala and barks a single order. Burn them all and torch the whole facility with them. Just as the clergyman starts speaking, his words get ripped away by one last, bone-chilling scream. Then the fire engulfs smash him out of existence in a tidal burst. Flames burst into a colossal explosion, tearing the ground apart and hurling tons of debris screaming into the sky. When the smoke finally thins, all that's left is a blazing deep crater, still smoldering where the facility used to stand. Staring at the wreckage, Raina growls that she'd wanted to kill the clergyman herself. Cecil apologizes for how fast it ended, then snaps back that there are still others to get vengeance on. And then she can't stop herself from asking, loud and furious, why anyone would even try to revive the evil god after all the hell they went through just to crush it. Kanado's face twists the moment the topic lands, and beside him, Rain nods as the rain pours down. Yeah, this whole mess is pure misery. He clenches his fist until his resolve turns stone, and he swears that if the evil god has marched this far, he'll stop it, right now. A new thought clicks in his mind. If he can take it down, he'll be one step closer to Cecil. Raina snaps her gaze to him, stunned by his sudden conviction, and demands, "Are you sure?" With the three of them huddled on a cliff's edge, staring out at the world below, Kanado clenches his resolve. He went from rock bottom to holding the power to face a god. In a tiny bowl, they smash herbs with a pestle until the poultice turns into a thick, ready-to-use paste. With the mixture finally ready, the young woman slaps it onto her companion's arm. He winces and complains that the herbs burn, but she snaps back that she has to get it on fast to seal their wounds, because they'll be sleeping outside again tonight. Norsha, her companion, clenches his jaw and winces through the pain, furious that this rough ground is grinding their injuries even worse. He only wishes they had a healer, or at least the money to camp on the safe edge. His companion jumps into the misery, her face tight with worry, because they can't afford an inn, and even if they tried to earn from the guild, the one person who can heal is still petrified. The idea of earning money drags Norshi straight back to that grim moment, being violently yanked out by two men, because he knows full well they'd just come back swinging again, and he'd end up battered with even worse injuries. As the memory slips away, his companion snaps, asking if he's hurt, and Norshi's rage erupts. He screams that Arga ruined everything, that the real villains are the ones who persecute them, and then, right from the tall grass nearby, a figure watches. Just as he roars, everything snaps out of nowhere. A tiny serpent-like monster with a dragon head slithers into view and coils around his arm, freezing him and his partner in shock. The creature clamps down on his wrist, squeezing with a grip so tight it feels like it's trying to lock him in place. Before anyone can react again, a fresh voice slices through the tension. Sissel, the young woman rising from the grass, steps up to them. Both of them are bleeding, yet she just calmly promises she'll heal every single one, and Norsha, shocked beyond words, blurts out who she even is. She gives no name at all, just a creepy, shadow-hugged smile that makes your skin crawl. In a quiet little town, Kanado and Rine sit across from each other at a tiny outdoor table, sipping their drinks and grabbing a rare breath of peace. A rain of beams bursts down, brimming with pure joy. She squeezes her eyes shut and grins like she can finally breathe. Her smile practically dares Kanado to ask, so he does, and she beams right back, saying she's definitely happy because she's going out with Lord Arga. When it finally turns into a real date, Raina blurts that if it's just the two of them, it counts, no questions allowed. He stays cool and tells her it's only a quick break before they have to go fight the evil god. Raina huffs, upset that he killed the romance, and orders him to rest too. The moment her foe is mentioned, her confidence drains. She stares into the cup's surface, watches her own reflection, and wrestles with the words evil god, admitting she has no clue what it really means. He meets her doubt with his own, admitting he's clueless too, and confessing he doesn't know much about them either. He keeps going, dropping every shred of what's known. Evil gods are said to crawl in from space, and if we're not ready, they could wipe out entire planets. With danger roaring in his gut, he decides there's no other move. If that thing is coming back to life, they have to crush it. Then he lets out a soft apology, like he's bracing for the worst. Raina's face drops into a grim silence as she realizes her vow to avenge her father has mutated into a conflict so massive it feels impossible. Kanata leans in and tells her there's nothing to apologize for, because thanks to her, they found out the evil god was reviving, and that matches what he's been aiming for all along. Then he fires off one sharp question. Does she even realize how tiny the number is of people who have ever managed to beat an evil god? He explains that in this world, only 2 people have ever managed to take down an evil god, Sissel, and the other is a mystery person called Lukumi Milk Tea. Renee mulls over the name and it hits her hard. Lukumi is a tamer just like her. Then she clocks the truth. Lukumi was the first and strongest SSS-ranked tamer ever, the ultimate dream every tamer chasing that path lives for. A confident grin claws its way across Kanato's face. He vows that if he crushes an evil god, he'll stand shoulder to shoulder with those 2 legendary monsters and takes one more brutal step toward becoming the strongest. She tilts her gaze up at him and the warmth in her face says it all. She's truly thankful for the chance he gave her. Then her mind snaps back to the legendary tamer, and she can't help but wonder out loud what kind of person Lakomi really is. He leans back and admits it, he's never laid eyes on her, and even Sissel swears he's never met the legendary tamer, either. Reina then pinpoints Lakomi's weird mystery, while Kanato brings up the whisper that she stormed off hunting the legendary monster Baltzert, only to shut it down fast as pure, unverified talk. He throws out a spark of hope. If they keep leveling up, they'll cross paths with her someday, the same way they finally found Sissel. Their chat grinds to a halt when a thought hits them. Rana blurts out that Sissel still hasn't returned, and she quickly reassures herself it's probably just too early. On a hill above the town, a shadowy hooded figure lurks in the trees, smirking at the thought of taking his sweet time for souvenirs. He raises a tiny vial to his lips, sneering at how carefree they all seem, then smirks as he clocks the strongest woman out shopping while the other 2 lounge with tea. So this easy, relaxed date is exactly where his side can snatch victory. His eyes harden with grim resolve. This is the only way he can't let them buy enough time to revive his lord, the evil god. He figured his targets had no clue where his lord was hiding, but they'd stumble onto it soon enough. Meanwhile, his plan stayed clean and cruel, drag the evil god miles away while everyone slept so they couldn't crash the revival. He lifted that vile thing with grim resolve, then declared, ice cold and certain, that once the revival was finished, victory would be theirs. Suddenly he froze across the clearing. Kanato's gaze latched onto him like a spotlight, and panic surged through the hooded man as his mind screamed, was he caught? But Kanato's focus snapped away. He caught a familiar aura from somewhere else and knew, without a doubt, that Sissel was back. After that terrifying premonition hit, the hooded man spun around, shock ripping through his face, because right behind him on the path stood Sissel Lu Sergil, staring at him like she'd just appeared out of nowhere. He just stared, completely speechless, stammering, "Why are you here?" Sissel grinned like it was no big deal and waved with a bright, cheerful hello. She then leaned in and told her, "It's simple, you can spot the evil god cult the second they're near, because they all reek of evil god blood." Turning to the little creature she cradled, she asked, "Lulu, can you smell it too?" And when she said it was from the evil god lineage, the hooded man instantly broke into a cold sweat, eyes bulging with sheer horror. His eyes darted past her straight to the horizon, and there, smoke columns were blasting into the sky from multiple spots. He gaped in total disbelief. Sissel's worst fears were confirmed. Every last research facility he had left was wiped out. She explained how they sniffed out the evil gods using their power, found the bases in seconds, and hit so fast that he didn't even get a chance to notice. Her face went stone cold. She almost never gets mad, but this time fury lit her eyes, and she swore they'd never, ever revive an evil god. The hooded man glares at Sizzle, his face twisted with contempt and irritation. Then he mutters to himself about what he ought to do to her for not catching his moves, like maybe Reina should be the one to decide what happens to her. Right before he can move, a tiny dark sphere streaks past him, and then boom, a violent blast erupts. The shockwave slams him off balance while Sissel stays ice calm, watching the wreckage like it's nothing. Still reeling from that brutal surprise attack, he clenches his fist, furious that it caught him off guard. Then he realizes he has no choice but to fall back and regroup. Just as he's about to bolt, he freezes. Sissel is blocking his path, staring at him with wide, stunned eyes like she appeared out of nowhere. His shock lasts about a second before he gets slammed down, crumpling to the ground and soaking it with his own blood. Meanwhile, Sissel stands over him, perfectly unscathed. Now that the danger has been shut down, she whips around to greet Kanato and Rebecca, who have just shown up. With zero drama, she declares, "I'm back," then tells the fallen man his hopes were pointless because escaping was never even an option. She flashes a bright peace sign and grins as she drops the biggest bombshell of all. She's found where the evil god is hiding. Meanwhile, in a nearby clearing, Norsher and the ponytail-wearing adventurer throw their hands up in relief, cheering that they're completely healed, acting like they can't believe their miracle, even though the helpers who saved them are still unseen. But their cloak-wearing companion isn't sharing the excitement. She wears a grim face and whispers that the more she hears, the darker everything starts to look. Her words ignite a raging outburst from Northshire. He snarls for answers and demands to know if Arga was behind it, calling it unforgivable that he'd pushed his old comrades into the state, and the ponytail girl slams back immediately, screaming that he has to finally understand why they're furious. As the tension kept ratcheting higher, that mysterious cloaked woman stepped into view, half swallowed by shadow, locking eyes with Norshi's group and firing off a shocking offer. If revenge was what they wanted, she'd help them get it. She laid out her position and admitted she's a tamer too, so as a fellow tamer, she couldn't possibly forgive someone like Arga. The word revenge slammed into Norshi's mind and his face twisted into straight-up confusion. He demanded to know who she was, and she answered by thrusting her hand forward, promising she'd power him up through fusion, while also revealing she could pull off fusion techniques too. With a grin that screamed confidence, she yanked off her hood and finally showed her face, and tucked a tiny three-eyed creature in her arms like it was precious treasure, then introduced herself as Lukumi Milktia. The whole crew reaches a towering cylindrical stone monster, the first labyrinth, and Riene swears this is exactly where the evil god is supposed to be lurking. She's absolutely sure. She says multiple cult members backed her up with matching stories. She breaks down their plan, stash the target inside a brutal SSS-rank labyrinth almost nobody dares to step into, so discovery becomes a long shot. Then the three adventurers stride through the grand archway and drop straight into the dungeon. As they press on, Riene blurts an apology up front in case her info turns out wrong, and Kanata just waves it off. No matter what, she's got him covered. But in the dark ahead, a monstrous beast with glowing eyes and razor-sharp fangs is stalking the shadows, watching them like a nightmare. A saber-toothed nightmare explodes out of the dark, claws flaring as it roars, then crashes down on Kanato. In the blink of an eye, the threat gets wiped out. The beast crumples onto the stone floor, head crushed. Kanato just shrugs it off, saying that even if the tip was fake, this place still has tons of rare loot waiting to be found. Reina and the others keep pushing forward until they hit a fork in the road, two arch paths that look exactly the same. The second she spots it, Reina snaps, "Split up, let's cover more ground." She swings her hand as she strides down the corridor, declaring her pick, then tells them, "If I hit a dead end, I'll just spin around and stick to your route." Kanato nods along like, "Yeah, that's exactly what we do too." Reina fires a worried question at Sissel. Will she be okay alone? Kanato brushes it off, all confidence that Sissel can handle herself, then warns her to watch for traps, and Sissel nods like she's already tuned in. With her familiars in tow, she steps away, and in the quiet, she can't help but wonder what the cult is really plotting. Right when they're about to split apart, Riene snaps into stillness, her face twisting with total shock. Kanato spins around and demands what's wrong. Riene can barely speak because a terrifying realization hits her like a punch. Riene's mind wasn't on the conversation at all. She turned bright red, clasped her hands, and finally realized they were alone, and suddenly it felt like a date, like Sissel had deliberately slipped away to give them the moment. Kanato's harsh order snapped her fantasy like a rubber band, "Get back into the shadows," and she froze, then blurted a terrified apology, swearing she wouldn't say another word as she slipped away. Meanwhile, Sissel took the other route and slammed into a wall when her path got blocked. She called it a dead end, then a sharp flicker of realization hit her, and she froze, staring into the dark. From the shadows, guttural snarls tore through the air as monstrous mouths, full of jagged fangs, snapped open wide. Her eyes snapped with recognition, and she caught the scent of the evil god's blood, grim as stone. She knew these weren't just ordinary monsters. Two horrifying shapes burst out from the shadows, humanoid and brutally strung up top, but from the waist down and in their flowing hair, pale tentacles writhed like living nightmares. The creature in glasses cut straight to her, claiming her survival came from the evil god's blood, and then slamming her with the question of whether she belonged to the evil god cult's research team. Sissel's eyes widened just a bit, like the accusation hit her in the chest. She snapped back defiantly, firing the question, if they weren't the real villains for trying to destroy the world. Then the creature erupted into a savage roar, raging because she'd already wiped out its comrades with one final hate-soaked scream urging her death, the monster lunged, and Sissel snapped her hand to her blade's hilt, her eyes burning with grim resolve. Its fluid body burst forward, blasting a storm of razor-sharp tendrils straight at her. She springs into the air with her sword gripped tight, and two tendril-bodied monsters rocket toward her from opposite sides. Her blade bites into its target, and the creature's weird, shifting body contorts and thrashes with brutal ripples from the impact. As the remains dissolve, one of the monster's heads bursts out, gulping out a bitter curse. Then Sissel freezes, stunned, when a glowing sigil snaps onto the ground and seals the creature inside its light. The sigil detonates in a blast of smoke, and when the haze finally clears, the monsters are gone for good, melting away into nothing as if they were never real. She stands alone after the chaos, staring at the bare space where her attackers were just moments ago, the smoke thinning around her like it's vanishing the whole nightmare. Her face twists with confusion and uneasy shock as her mind scrambles to figure out what the hell just happened. Meanwhile, deep in the labyrinth, Kanado grabs Riene and warns her to tread carefully, convinced the path to the evil god's chamber has to be close. Then, as they push forward, a voice suddenly roars his alias out into the dark Arga. His eyes snapped wide, and a sharp, sudden recognition hit him like lightning. He whirls around and sees Nimra, who flashes him a casual wave. Reina clocks the man as the one who exiled Lord Arga, and Kanado immediately snaps, "So what are you doing here?" Nimra smirks. He'd heard Kanado was on the way, and he's been waiting. Then he leans in and tells Kanado, flat out, that he should already know why they're meeting. With a calm, almost cheerful smile, Nimra lays out his goal in one breath. He's going to kill Kanado because he hates him. Riene slides between Kanado and the newcomer, snaps that he should wait, then clocks the man as an enemy and confidently vows to take this on herself. As Nemura gets ready to step in, she keeps her cool and scans everything. Inside her head, questions explode. How in the world could Kanado, who got demoted to E rank, slip into an SSS rank lab? And then there's that missing piece. Sans isn't there either, yet Kanado looks completely unshaken, like none of it makes sense. Kanado slams his hand up to stop Riene, barking that they'll first watch what their opponent does. Riene fights back, saying he looks weak and there's no reason to be cautious, but Kanado shuts her down hard, shouting there's absolutely no way. Losing it, he snaps at Riene and roars that he's done with interruptions ruining their time alone. Reina takes it as her opening and rockets forward in a blur. Nimra snaps her fist out of the way with effortless ease, the clash driving them both into a low, ready stance. She flicks her eyes to the hand that's been caught, startled for half a second, then looks back up with a smug little smirk, shooting him down with a scoff, just like she'd predicted, saying his strength is basically nothing. Nimra blows off her taunt and casually hurls her backward through the air. Kanado gasps and cries her name, while Nimra lets out a slow, sinister chuckle. He bursts open his stance with his arms flung wide, and from his back two grotesque, discolored arms sprout out, pinning his own arms like they've claimed him. Then he sneers at Arga, asking if he's really keeping a monster that won't obey. Kanado freezes in horror as he watches the transformation, and a strange voice cuts in to confirm it's the creature Nimra insists is Riene. Now the truth of those extra limbs finally clicks. This young woman with pigtails has returned, and she's clinging to Nimra's back, arms locked tight around his torso, smirking like she's having the last laugh as she says it's just as foolish as the one he tamed. Nimra bursts into laughter at the twisted look on Argus' face, while Kanado's mind spirals as she thinks of Sans. Then Raton snaps that she'll punish this monster in Argus' place, and Nimra just grins and tells her to do it. She screamed at the fallen vampire, snarling at him to obey his master's orders. Just as she tried to speak, a black-clad fighter streaked across the ground and slammed Kanados into Nemaris with a brutal kick, sending both of them and the parasitic Raton careening away from Rena. He snapped his focus to the fallen vampire princess and shouted her name like it was a lifeline, begging her to open her eyes. Then Rene stirred on the ground, a weak laugh slipping past her lips as the dust and debris finally settled around them. Just as he started begging, a wild laugh burst from behind. Nimra stood there untouched, hand clamped to his chest, swearing the attack didn't even sting. Raton perched on his back and echoed it, roaring that they'd gotten stronger. He froze in disbelief, beads of cold sweat spilling down his brow, and Kanadu blurted out, "Wait, did that evil god cult do something to us?" Nimra and Raton stared back, totally baffled, until Nimra finally explained that the one who turned them like this was a gentle tamer. A cruel smirk snapped across his face as he bragged about a legendary tamer, stronger than Kanado, way beyond her leg, and when he finally dropped the name, Lakumi Milk Tea, it hung there like a punchline, freezing Kanado in total shock. Inside the guild hall, the receptionist bursts in with a shake-your-bones grin, fist clenched tight in front of her, shouting that she's just spotted an incredible person, Lakomi, right then and there. The moment she makes her claim, every adventurer around her goes cold with doubt. One man demands proof, another mutters that nobody's seen Lakomi in years, and a third lays it out with brutal clarity. Lakomi is the legendary SSS-ranked tamer. Then the receptionist slams the table and swears it was her. She knows her personally, and claims she spotted Lakomi right at the edge of town. She doubles her confidence and spills a personal truth. Years ago, when she was still a troublemaker, she got beat by Lakomi, so there's absolutely no way she could be wrong. The sudden reveal shocks the adventurers who have been whispering about her past, and when Ansa turns to demand what's going on, Nimra's eyes flare with realization as she blurts out Lukumi's name. while the receptionist, rattled to the core, begs him to stop digging into her wild, unruly history. He suddenly remembers what Kanado and the others told him earlier. The pieces snap together now. Lukumi is with us. He and Raton lock eyes, grim with resolve. Nemura declares their new allies will forge them into something stronger, so they can finally crush Arga and take their revenge. Raton's grin turns vicious as he adds, Arga's next. Back at the guild, the argument won't die. Sub-hunters press the question hard. Why would Lakumi, the lone wolf type, team up with inferiors? The receptionist even wonders if she'd somehow missed Lakumi going solo. Then one adventurer turns to Nemura and demands how Lakumi could make them stronger, and Nemura snaps back that he genuinely has no clue. Out in the dead still, rocky wasteland, Kanado stands face to face with Nemurus, while the vampire Riene snoozes nearby, curled up like nothing's wrong. Far off, a lone spire tower pierces the sky from inside a circular fortress. That last talk is still razor-sharp. Lukumi, rocking a confident grin, tells a stunned Nimra she can fuse too, while Kanado, sweat-drenched with panic, just stammers her name in pure disbelief. Yeah, this fear's totally earned. Nimra and Rattan, their faces now carved with bizarre marks, grin like maniacs and shout in perfect sync that they've been reborn, fused into something stronger than before. The fused warrior needles Kanado, soaking up the shock and dread on his face, then flashes a manic grin and charges in hard, roaring at Kanado to give him that expression again as he closes the gap. Kanado and his other half unleash a furious, perfectly timed onslaught. Kanado gets shoved into defense, blocks Nemura's punch, slips Ratun's wild swing, and Ratun keeps cackling like it's pure fun as their synchronized hits hammer him without mercy. The barrage slams Kanado into action. He barks a hard cry, whirls on his heel, and snaps a loose rock off the ground like a bullet, driving it straight at Nimmer's head. It lands with a brutal thud, smashing into his eyes. The hit crumples him forward, clutching his face like it's on fire, while Kanado stands back with bared tension, staring at the damage he just dealt. A low chuckle rumbles out of the warrior as he yanks his hand back. There, in place of where my body used to be, sits a mangled, smoking ruin, and with a wide, unsettling grin he asks, "So, does Kanato really think he got me?" What? As his flesh bubbles in his eye socket and snaps back in an instant, he smirks and goes, "Yeah, any wound heals now." Then he points at the power like it's obvious, calling it yet another gift from Lakomi. Now that his eyesight is fully back, he throws his arms wide like a champion and declares his victory. By fusing with monsters, they've forged bodies that won't ever fall to Kanado. He leans in and fires off the question, "Kanado, what's it like facing them now?" Pushing whether fear or despair claws at him, but Kanado doesn't flinch. He stays steady and says, flat out, that with their power at his side, he feels neither. Kanado's icy denial snaps the fused warrior out of his guard, and Kanado's eyes flare as he spills the one thing he's terrified of, what those fools are, and how hopelessly stupid it all is. Then he barrels in with a brutal question. Did they really think their run-in with Lakumi was luck or some fate-engineered trick? And with no mercy, he declares the truth. The person they met was an imposter. He blasts his voice at full volume, declaring his conclusion like it's carved in stone. The one who handed them their power has to be tied to the evil god cult, and for reasons he can't explain yet, that cult has been closing in and bending them to its will. He kept tearing into the cult's playbook, insisting the only way they could earn trust was by dressing up as a legendary warrior, because if they'd ever let their real colors show as the evil god cult, even Nimra and Rattan would have been right where he was. He shoved a warning at them. Whatever they were trying to fuse with was basically an evil god monster, soaked in its own blood, and if they kept going, their human forms would slowly get erased. The terrifying truth hit Nimra like a truck, and he tore loose a gut-wrenching scream as his body erupted into violent mutation, his arms stretching into twisted, unnatural appendages. As Kanado watched them change, his face stayed ice-cold, zero mercy. He clocked their whole mindset, always tossing blame onto others, sneering at people, and hiding behind comfort. And when it was over, he decided it was the perfect end for creatures that ugly. As the fused pair finished their grotesque merge, his thoughts spilled out right in front of him. He blurted that it wasn't just their hearts that looked wrong, their bodies had turned into a twisted mirror of their intercorruption. The insult lit a fire under Nimmer's head, roaring back in pure defiance, but Kanado didn't flinch. He fired right back that sure, they'd gotten stronger, yet a quality upgrade still couldn't turn trash into anything but trash. The creature exploded forward in a raging lunge, and Kanado snapped into a defensive stance. He knew he had to settle this in monster form, then whip aside and dodge as the attack crashed into the ground. He shot across the gap in an instant and jammed a fist, wrapped in dark energy, straight into the creature's torso. Then the blow detonated a brutal shockwave, making both heads scream in raw, crushing agony. That hit tore their unstable fusion apart in an instant. When the creature started ripping to pieces, the Raton head shrieked his name through sheer desperation, our god. With one last bone-cracking swing, he finished the strike. Then the monster crumbled into dust as Raton's severed torso hit the ground and tumbled out of view. He stared as his opponent's mangled body refused to give up. Then the Nimmer creature snarled from within, voice breaking but blazing with defiance, insisting it wouldn't die and would regenerate. He didn't flinch at the boast. He raised his hand and shouted, "Come out, Lulu," and a tiny orb-like Shaggoth popped into existence, then instantly slammed with its skill crushed hope charging like a cannonball straight at the fused monster. The blast slammed into the creature's chest, and Nimra laughed it off at first, sneering that it was nothing more than a flesh wound, until his quick heel couldn't hide the truth, and his smugness snapped in one heartbeat, replaced by wide-eyed horror as he realized something was seriously wrong. He calmly broke it down. Lulu isn't just a familiar, she's an evil god-type monster, and every wave she unleashes locks the regeneration of her own kind. He even pointed to what happened before. Riene's father had regenerative powers too, but when Lulu hit him with a mental assault, he couldn't heal at all. The fused creature just kept screaming, stunned, as its wound rotted and refused to close. The damage was brutal. Nemmer's body crumpled and melted apart, his shape shattering into dark, drifting motes of energy, and he stammered, "My body is crumbling," in pure horror. With one last silent burst, the countless pieces of her body vanished to nothing. Then the force tore her upper torso free, still clinging to a chunk of monstrous flesh, and launched it screaming through the air as she cried out his name one final time. Rage drove her like a missile straight at him, and as she twisted through the air, her face snapped into a terrifying grimace, screaming, "I'll kill you." Just as she was about to reach her target, a harsh, commanding voice sliced through the air. "Hey." Right out of nowhere, Rienal Ararilcia slammed into the space between them, spectral blades bursting around her and stopping Raton's desperate lunge a hair's breadth from its mark, leaving the faceless creature frozen in stunned silence. The vampire princess flashed a predatory grin at helpless Raton, and she hissed, "You really did it earlier," voice dripping with menace as she brought up a past crime, while terror froze his face into something that couldn't move. She doesn't hesitate for a second. She whips up a storm of blades that drive straight into the little body in front of her. Nimura's screams tear through the air as he's still stuck to her, writhing in agony. Through the chaos, Nimura's voice rips with regret. He yells Arga's name and curses the fact he was even there. Kanado can only stare, frozen in shock at the ruthless, instant turn of events. Right after the killing strike, Nimura's body breaks down into a roiling puddle, bubbling away with his life, and as his last breath rips out, he spits curses at his enemies. Then his voice fades mid-shout when he finally calls Argo one last time. As the fuse finally melts down, Sissel barrels onto the scene, shouting Arga's name with panic in her voice, and Kanado whips his head toward her, still stuck in stunned disbelief. The monster-riddled pool boils over like it's furious for a heartbeat, then it calms to dead silence, and the surface wipes away every trace it was ever there. Sissel screeches to a stop beside Kanado and Reina, staring at the wreckage, and then she murmurs that this scene matches the last incident, down to the last detail. Her words yank Kanado into action. He blurts out, "Wait, what happened?" and admits he's still lost, while Sissel, eyes locked on some distant figure sitting on rubble, cuts in with a chilling truth. It's all for the evil god. Kanado's eyes snap to the woman, and his stomach drops as he realizes she's the fake Lakomi. He throws the question at her, why drag him and the others into her scheme? She only smiles, cool as ice, and admits she picked them on purpose because every one of them hated Kanado with a burning, buried fury. With a cold, cruel smirk, she explains it in one brutal breath. The more hatred they soak up, the more her evil god surges, until the adventurers aren't people anymore, just food to bulk up her deity. Sissel finally snaps the horrifying plan into place. She's got those who hate Kanado turning on the cultists who hate Sissel, and the imposter backs it up, saying their death-fueled hatred gets supercharged the instant they die, turning into the cult's most powerful nutrition. With her plan finally laid bare, she whips her arms wide and power erupts, cracking the earth all around her. With a victorious roar, she announces the evil god's revival is here at last, and that it has grown terrifyingly strong. She grins like she's lost her mind and drops her final, terrifying words into Kanado's world, "Enjoy the nightmare." Kanado doesn't look away. His eyes stay locked on her as his face tightens with cold, unshakable resolve.